When I was 2 years old, when I was dedicated to the cause of Lucifer, I was at that point a seventh generation witch.
I was laying there, practically naked, and I had her hold me as if I was a baby. I couldn't talk. I couldn't open my eyes. I believe my eyes were rolled up back in my head.
There was evidence of human sacrifice on this site. One of my first questions I asked God, is there evidence of human sacrifice? Now looks around there, yes. We found the man with his fingers like, who was Richard Zachary.
And it started to come down the stairs and there was disgusting smell. And at that point, they said, do you know what they did to us? And that's when I fled back home.
But no, they would touch me. They would take pictures of my head if they wanted to communicate with me. Human sacrifice. Human sacrifice. Human sacrifice. Human sacrifice. Implants are real, okay? You know, we've got them on X-ray, we've got them on CAT scan, we've got them on the Gauss meter, which measures magnetic field, 7.5. We've got them on an ultrasound machine. It's right there. It's hard, physical evidence, not delusionary.
All right, guys, we're here on Conspirnormal, and it has been about 3 weeks since we recorded a show here in the studio. You guys out there listening didn't even notice that probably because we had a show every week, but we had done a couple of weeks of like 2-day shows. So we had plenty in the arsenal. And before we get started though, with the 2016 election special, Rob won, and I'll tell you why we're referring to him as that in just a minute. How's everything going with you?
It's going good. I got a new couch out here for Luke, who's not here to apprioate it.
Yeah, he's going to have really good time sleeping on this.
Well, it's got recliners.
It's really comfy.
It's got recliners built into it.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it'll be great for him.
Well, before right when I got here, you had gotten some new furniture, and you had switched the furniture from the house, that you put the new furniture in the house, and then you put this one from the house in here, and the old couch into the yard. Right. Tell everybody what happened when I got here.
Well, me and my oldest daughter managed to move the old couch out of the studio out into the yard, and my plan was when Adam got here to talk him into helping me carry it down to the road. But while I was waiting for him, I let the dog out and went inside to get a cup of coffee and relax for a few minutes waiting for him. And then he gets here and he comes inside. He's like, so you put that couch out there for your dog to have a new chew toy or what? So then, we went to the backyard and it was everywhere. In a matter of minutes, she had covered the backyard in white fluff.
Yeah, it was a disaster area for sure.
That's awesome.
That's what you've had to deal with today so far. So, yeah. Well, guys, if anybody doesn't know, if you've been living under a rock forever, we have something called an election coming up in 2 days. And tonight I have on kind of like a cavalcade of guests, some people that I really respect in the field of political observation, punditry. We have coming on tonight, later on, Rocky Stucci and Scotty Roberts from the Situation Room, and then our good friend Micah Hanks. But first, I'd like to introduce a new guest, and this is why I was referring to producer Rob here as Rob number 1. Here's Rob number 2, Mr. Rob Gray. Welcome to Conspirnormal.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hey, thanks for coming on. It's interesting because we were talking about right before we started that I don't know how we became friends on Facebook. We just did. Right. And I've seen a lot of your posts on Trump, and I've always looked at your posts and respected a lot of the things that you've had to say. And that's why I was interested in having you come on, because you are a Trump supporter. You make no bones about it. And I've been very critical about Trump in the past on this show. Yes. But I really wanted to get someone on that was a diehard supporter of Donald Trump, someone that believes that Trump can change things in this country. And we'll talk about a little bit about Hillary Clinton here in a little bit. But first of all, Rob, I want to get your background, who you are and what it is that you do.
Okay. Well, I grew up in Laredo, Texas. I don't know if you remember that city. That's one of the first cities that Trump visited when he made his presidential, candidacy open to the people, I guess. Laredo, Texas is a border town. It borders Mexico and it's about 150, I'd say about 240 miles from Austin, going south.
Okay.
So that's where I grew up. And I saw firsthand just the influx of illegal immigration. So as a kid, I wanted to get into Border Patrol, which is kind of something had been something my whole life that I looked up to as far as law enforcement. My uncle's a Border Patrol agent in Laredo. He's been doing that I think for about 35 years. So he as a supervisor there, I mean he's one of the guys that gets all the intel before a lot of the press gets it, I guess. So I saw and I could hear just from being at barbecues with all the other agents how bad it was and how they had both hands tied behind their back. And then as far as my background, I got actually into Border Patrol in 2001. That was the year that I guess 9/11 and all that happened. It was December of 2001 is when I left to South Carolina for training.
Okay.
And pretty much everything that I heard was true. Now I had to make my own conclusion because obviously I wanted to see for myself. But living in South Carolina, being there in the barracks with everybody, getting the training that they get, it's amazing training. But the consensus is that nobody can really do much with it.
Where do you go in South Carolina for that training?
It's in Charleston. It's a naval base. I'm not going to say where, but you can find out. It's not public information. I'm not going to give the address, but it's where Border Patrol. It's called FLETC, Federal Law Enforcement Training Centers. There's some in Virginia and I want to say in Arizona. But yeah, Charleston, South Carolina was, or I think it still is one of the Border Patrol training centers. So living there, like I said, I got to hear from the other guys and just, like I said, it's so restricted that for every one person that comes over and they actually catch, there's another 100 that get through. It's just, it's so porous that there's no way without a higher type of technology like a wall. Again, there's some places that you can literally just walk across. I myself personally have filmed families of illegal immigrants actually crossing the border because there's some parts where the water it goes so low that it's so shallow you can walk across.
Sure.
And I filmed it myself. Now the Border Patrol standing there waiting for them to cross over to give them water, to feed them, to get them medical attention if they need it, and then from there they process them, and it's actually customs that they process if it's right at the border. So there's that's how it used to be. I know now it's all under one DHS kind of symbol, which it wasn't back in the day when I trained. It was still U.S. Border Patrol.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's just that's kind of my upbringing as far as seeing what the problems were. I could name so many other things. I mean, just the fact that it's so easy to get over across the border, and then let's say you wreck into somebody and you're from Mexico. This is just something that nobody's really talked about, but if you think about it, it's a big problem in border towns, where you have insurance, you're driving your brand new car, somebody with this 20-year-old truck from Mexico hits you, they can give them a ticket, but all they're going to do is go right back across and throw away that ticket, and then when the court date comes, well, who are they? They could have given a fake name. Mexico's pretty lax when it comes to IDs, so they could have given fake info. So it trickles down to, even our insurance prices are higher because of the influx of illegals. So again, that's kind of what it was as far as how I was brought up. I'm half Mexican actually and half Jewish. So it's kind of a weird mix, but that's kind of
interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So I kind of saw, I grew up knowing that it was just a big problem as a child. I mean, this is when Reagan was. I'm 36, so when Reagan was president, I was 5, 6, 7. But even back then, at that age, my grandparents, my parents, they'd all talk about it and how somebody got hit by this driver. Oh, was he from Mexico? Like that's the first question they used to ask. just because that if that's the case, they're screwed. So yeah, I mean, that's how I grew up. Now, when Ron Paul had his immigration reforms back in, I think it was 2008, I was really behind him because he was really trying to be more open to not only illegal immigration, but I'm sorry, not open. He was trying to close the illegal immigration loopholes, but the media just totally ran him over. I don't know if you remember that election or not.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was a big. I too am a big Ron Paul supporter. I still really respect him.
Me too, man. Yeah, I definitely think they did it. They gave him a bum rap. So yeah.
Yeah, I will absolutely agree with you on that one for sure. For sure.
So that's kind of how I got into it. Ron Paul was my intro to. Well, okay, so I resigned from Border Patrol, right? About 4 months in, just because I see that it's just a broken system.
Wow.
No way.
Really?
Yeah.
Do a lot of guys get into it, and then they, like you, do they decide that they go into it with like kind of optimism, and then after a few months, do they leave? Does that happen often?
Yes, I'll put it this way: if the first week is what's I guess called Hell Week, right? And so anybody who's really hasn't prepared shape wise is kicked out automatically just from being out of shape.
Yeah.
So that first week you get about, I'd say, 15% of a drop. Then those guys that stay are kind of, they're going to stay because really that was the hardest part. But then as people talk and you have different classes there in the barracks with you. So some guys that are 7 months in will talk to a guy that's just got there. And I think once they talk to those guys and they say, yeah, man, it's cool. It's awesome. You're getting 60 grand, 70 grand a year starting, but you're just going to be sitting down watching people break the law. That's what you're going to be doing. Mm-hmm. That's it. If you're okay with that, go right ahead. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying it's their fault. It really isn't. It's the legislation going through that Obama's pretty much, cut both their arms and one leg off and then said, okay, go to work. So yeah, I mean, the laws need to be changed. But when Trump came out with his immigration reform policies, that just kind of made me say, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. He hit on something that nobody else was really even saying, and something that I've lived firsthand and can see that he's not lying. So you can say all you want about rapists and drug dealers and whatever, but when you look at the stats, I mean, I've seen pictures of the women that are left out there, murdered because they couldn't carry the drugs that the guy wanted them to carry. It's a really bad culture of just, I mean, like, I think it was 90% of the women that cross get raped. You know what I mean? So he knows the stats, and I've seen firsthand and heard of all the horrible, just horrible stories. It's bad. And so that's kind of why the big thing for me is the immigration.
That's what I was about to ask you, is like the big issue for you is illegal immigration. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily immigration in total, but the illegal aspect of it.
See, here's the thing. And that's what a lot of people get. I'm sorry. Do you want to? I don't mean to interrupt.
Well, no. Go ahead.
A lot of people get confused with. They want to put a blanket over the immigration issue, and it's really not just a one stance issue. I guess you can have various stances. I'm pro immigration, absolutely. I have friends one of my best friends, his father came illegally, by the way, in the 50s. Now, back then, I'm assuming it was easier to get in, but he got in. He worked hard. Now again, he came here illegally. When he saved up enough money, he went through the steps to get his legal, his citizenship. He opened a restaurant with the skills that he brought over from Mexico, and now he owns a franchise of restaurants. I mean, he's a success story, I'd like to say. So he did it the right way. He crossed over illegally. I get that. Now that's kind of not a good thing. But when somebody wants it bad enough, they're going to do it the right way. The problem we have right now is that there's people living off of our government in, let's just say, Laredo, living off the actual taxes that we're paying, and then they're sending it to Mexico. That's a huge issue you see there. You also see a lot of cars parked out front of outside of people's houses with, Escalades. And then you see that you talk to them and they're like, yeah, no, I'm here illegally and I'm on food stamps. And you're like, what? Like, it's just, there's this huge scam that they pull. And again, it's all the illegal immigrants that are doing it. It has nothing to do with legal immigration. If you came here illegally, like Ron Paul back in the day, he used to say, if you came here illegally and you've proven yourself to be a good citizen, dude, they're not going to just throw you out. That's not how they're looking for people that are really, really bad. And those are the guys bringing the drugs in. Just like Trump said in his first speech, that's a lot of people just took that one piece and ran with it. And I think that's where he got that really bad rap. But, I understood what he was saying from the beginning. I never doubted his racism once. I knew exactly what he was talking about.
To stay a little bit on this immigration topic, because I can tell this is a topic that is very important to you.
It is.
And it is to me as well, because my grandfather was an immigrant. I am actually married to an immigrant from Brazil who did not exactly do things the right way. Right. So for me, it's a little bit of I'm 50-50 on it. I see everything that you're saying here. And because from where you come from, you can say that, in your experience that you see things from the ground. But we also have a situation as well where, we need some kind of reform. Yes. I'm not necessarily against the concept of a wall if we had maybe like an Ellis Island on that wall, someplace people could come in and be filtered through, so we don't get these bad elements. That would be something that would be really nice.
Right? Have you ever gone to Mexico? Like, have you crossed the border?
No, I've never gone that way. I've never crossed the border.
So here's how it's kind of set up. It's I-35. It's one of the biggest thoroughfares, right? So
yeah,
you can literally get on 35, drive south, and hit Mexico. So what happens is it's set up as a bridge system. You go through customs, they check your car. I'm sure you've seen in the movies where, people are crossing over and you see that, the checkpoint or whatever.
Sure.
That's the Mexican border. So we already have thoroughfares where people are checking this info. The problem is there's not enough.
Yeah.
And they figure out, okay, well, since they're going to have all their people here, we're just going to find a way that, to get around this part. It's not, and really, it has to do with that wall. If Border Patrol has something, I'm not going to even, say their name, but basically what it is, they have these sensors. Like, I guess I just said them, that go off every, I don't know how many feet. I don't know the actual number now, but when there's an illegal, migration, I guess you could say of more than, I guess, 2 people, 5 people, whatever it is. They go off. The sensors go off, and it actually tells them, okay, there's something going off here. It has to be, I would assume, within a 10-mile radius so that they can catch whoever it is that's crossing. So it's just a matter of putting manpower, technology, which is what we're talking about here with the wall. I can't envision a wall being. I know it sounds good and it's really awesome PR to say that it's getting 10 feet higher every time he gets angry at somebody. It's funny, but I can't see it being bigger than 20 feet at the most, and that's all you would really need, with maybe every mile having one of those sensors that goes off, and it kind of just half mile or quarter mile, it kind of goes out in every direction. I don't know.
Yeah, we're not talking about the wall on Game of Thrones, right? We're talking. Yeah.
Right. I've never watched that show. So I know I'm a horrible person for that, but yeah. I've seen some clips that were Game of Thrones, Donald Trump.
Yeah, I've seen those. Yeah.
So I know what wall you're talking about. But yeah, I mean, we're just talking about. First of all, logistically, it's not going to be for the first 2 years that he's even going to be able to start this whole deportation thing if he wants to do it. I've done the math on it. It's just too large. So the first thing he's going to want to do, and that's why he's pushing law and order so hard, is because he wants to go after the bad people. And what I mean by bad is somebody who's broken the law by coming over here 3 or 4 times, murdered, killed. We're housing these people in our prisons for really no reason except that their countries won't take them. And the company that does that is actually called CCA. So for your listeners, if you all want to look that up, that's who they are. It's CCA. I think it's Corrections something of America, but that's who houses these criminals. So your taxpayer money is going to house thousands of lawbreakers from other countries, and I'm not just talking about Mexico. Everywhere. It could be from Korea. I mean, anywhere. People that have broken the law are just sitting there and wasting taxpayer money.
Because nobody thinks about this, but there's a sizable illegal population of people from China.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. China, El Salvador. I could name 10 countries that there's just people that are coming in. It's not just Mexico.
No, you're right. Absolutely. The point I was going to make about that, though, about my wife, was that even she can see, because, she's someone that has never lived off of like a government assistance, as far as I know, at least not in this country.
Right.
And she can see that, because she has people that work with her, that work under her, that are from Mexico, and their kids are getting WIC, they're getting food stamps, and these are not American citizens. And that's the kind of thing, although I am very much for, people getting assistance. Mm-hmm. If we're helping people that are not American citizens, but at the same time, how can we sustain that? That's unsustainable.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. You can't.
You just have to be realistic about things, honestly.
My wife is the same. She actually at first was kind of leery with Donald Trump, and then she came around little by little. She's actually full Mexican. I mean, her family's from Mexico. They're first generation immigrants. Mm-hmm. So I mean, they're all pro Trump. I just had dinner with the in-laws last night, and we all talked about how Clinton's crazy. So they're all pro Trump. It's not a racist thing. She sees it. Your wife. It's really just a matter of, if you have a store and your supplier's giving you crap material to sell to your customers, sooner or later your customers are going to be like, screw this, I'm out. And that's exactly what I feel Americans are doing right now. The media, just everybody anti-Trump is just giving this crap, biased, 100% biased, not fair. It really isn't fair and balanced media and news, and people are like, you know what, screw this. And I'm seeing the turnaround. I'm seeing the pendulum swing, and it's crazy. It's just insane the way, like you said, your wife sees it. I mean, if your wife sees it, my wife sees it, my in-laws see it, my mom sees it. Yeah, I mean, I can see a landslide coming unless they pull a crazy voter fraud thing, which I doubt. I think that's just ruined.
Well, one thing on the immigration issue, and then we can move on to some other things, is that I look, my wife is from another country, my stepson is from another country. With him, everything was done right because she was married to me and she had her green card. She was able to apply for him in Brazil. So he came here, and now he's in the U.S. Navy serving this country. Beautiful. So, it is, and I'm all for it. As the grandson of an immigrant, I'm for immigration. But the simple fact is that everybody cannot come here. We can't just empty the rest of the world onto the United States.
The extreme vetting, I don't understand why that's a big issue. If you have, like I said, if you have felonies and you've been breaking the law in a country that isn't your own, if I go to Mexico and break, any law, really, mm-hmm. I've been arrested in Mexico. It is horrible.
Oh, I can only imagine.
It's the worst. If you think human rights exist over there, they don't. Water, they're like, it's bad. It's bad. I can't even. I still have PTSD from it. Okay, it's horrible.
Wow.
So yeah, it's really bad. So the fact that they can get away, not get away, but the fact that they can have their laws and their wall on their southern border, and then they're going to complain because they know that they're just sending. And I'm not lying when I tell you this. They are sending people from the prisons, there's orphanages that they have that after a certain age they just can't be there for bad kids, I guess you could say, like juvenile detention centers. those people just get kicked out onto the street. There's no laws over there. So the first thing they're going to do is, well, where do I go? Okay, we'll go to the USA. That's the people that are coming. People who have a business in Mexico do not want to even, I mean, they're thriving over there. They have their companies. They send their exports. They export it to the USA and sell it. There's a huge import-export business in Laredo. So, I mean, they're doing fine. It's just they're not, and they're here legally because they have the money to pay, for the process. Because as you know, it's pretty expensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of my point is that the only people who really don't want to be vetted are the people who are breaking the law anyway.
And it's not only the people that are criminals or people that are orphans, people that are unwanted. I mean, there's plenty of people that, because of the economic situation in Mexico, how it's been up and down, and the extreme poverty. I mean, the Mexican government has even made pamphlets on how to cross the border and all this kind of stuff. And that's really honestly saying, okay, we don't want to deal with you. You're a burden on our society. So go to the United States. Get out of here. I mean, that's kind of crazy when you really think about it. But let's turn away from the immigration. Let's talk about some of the other issues. What other issues what other issues on Trump do you feel that he's very strong on?
Second Amendment.
Okay.
Absolutely, the Second Amendment. I am a big pro Second Amendment just person. I go shooting maybe once a year, I'd say, so it's not a lot, but
sure.
I used to hunt when I was a kid. I mean, I'm pro Second Amendment just for the fact that history definitely repeats itself when you let people take away your guns. It's just it's never a good idea to hand over your sovereignty and your freedom to somebody who pretty much isn't looking out for your best interests. And I see the strong stance he's had about with the Second Amendment, as opposed to hers, which kind of is iffy, if anything, and that's at best. And at worst, I mean, I've seen the leaks where she's pretty much saying she's going to go after our guns is pretty much what they say. I know it sounds tinfoil, but that's pretty much kind of what Huma had said in that leak. So, I mean, it's just a matter of kind of comparing what they're going to do with your freedom. Does Trump want to take away your rights, or does he want to protect them? And it seems to me that she wants to take away people's rights for people that aren't from this country. Whereas Trump wants to do the opposite, and he wants to protect us. He wants to protect the Second Amendment. That's a huge one. Just his endorsements with the Border Patrol, with law enforcement. She can throw her 17 generals number out, but I mean, if you've looked at the names, they're really nobodies. I mean, he has the backing of pretty much the military. All these people that really are protecting our country from Islamic terror. So that's kind of that's the other issue that I'm big on is his Second Amendment stance.
What about some of the Republicans that have repudiated him? Within what I guess is nominally his own party.
I think it has to do with the thing I was talking about earlier. They're pretty much tied to the same people. The Republican Democrat two-party system is just kind of I'd say a joke at this point, because they're all part of the same club.
I would agree with that. Yep.
Yeah, so that's kind of why when I hear these Republicans, I think I don't look at them as Republicans. I see them as people that are just they see that their gravy train is going to end if Donald Trump gets elected, and Republican, Democrat, flower party. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I can see what they're doing and their actions. They're definitely not part of any kind of Republican that I know. So yeah, I mean, even Ted Cruz was really disappointing up until the last few days. But then again, I won't ever trust him again just from how he acted. And I'm being from Texas. That's big because I hear a lot of people saying the same thing. We're very big on loyalty, and he showed his true colors. And I think that the voters are going to have their say in Texas. At least.
Are you talking about when the Republican convention? What he said there?
Not only that, just the way he acted throughout the whole Never Trump campaign with Kendall Unruh, I think was her name, or Unruh, whatever, and that whole situation. Just not ever coming out and to say you need to support the candidate. That just showed me. I mean, you saw him, and then when he was coming off of the plane with, I think it was Loretta Lynch, and not the Clintons, the Obamas. That kind of just that showed you right there that that's all part of the same team. especially when he talked so bad about Obama. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
That was the turning point for me when I was like, you know what, man, I'm gonna really do my research on this guy. And the more I did, with how he treated his wife, to all the rumors that came out. I mean, it's just he's not anything that I would want to associate myself with at this point.
Well, I mean, he carries himself as very like he's the constitutional guy, right? He says he believes in the Constitution. I'm very dubious about Cruz in some ways myself.
Yeah, he's not. I guess I liken him to those kids that wanted to be cool. That's the best way. That kid in high school who wanted to try his best to be cool, but he just tries to be somebody who he isn't. That's kind of who I feel like he is. I feel like he's putting on a front for something really a lot darker, maybe.
So what about another issue? What about healthcare? What do you think about that? You think Trump is going to repeal Obamacare? Do you think that he has something that he could do better with?
The only thing I know about the healthcare issue is that the Obamacare premiums are going through the roof right now.
Yes.
I'm not very well versed on the whole. I know that my mom at first was helped by it from what I understand. And then she just recently, I don't know if it had to do with this whole change recently, but maybe about 2 months ago, she was like, oh my gosh, it's going to go up. And that's kind of all I've heard. I don't really talk to her about it. So that's kind of my understanding with it. But yeah, I mean, Obamacare is just it's Hillary care, right? And it's before that, I think it was, I forgot what there's been different kind of, socialist type of takeovers for healthcare. And it goes back to the whole Alinsky Marxist thing, right? Like, I mean, that I don't understand how the media is not like, hey guys, this has happened before. It's like, it's a rule, like they want to take over the healthcare. That's one of the Marxist tactics. Well, go ahead.
I think my problem with it has been primarily, and I mean, when the whole debate started, this is how it came down for me. I was actually not against the idea of a public option. Okay. I was not against it. But it seemed to me like there was so much flack that was thrown that way that there was a compromise that came up with Obama and with the Republicans in Congress that they would throw money at, they would basically bail out the insurance companies. Once they did that, the insurance companies really had no competition because they had the government supporting them. So either way, we've got a socialist program. It's just it may be a different kind of socialism than the other. And so now, of course, yes, premiums have skyrocketed because the insurance company is like, oh well, the government's just going to pay us. Exactly. We've got the government in our pocket and vice versa. So yeah, I mean, it's been a huge disaster. And I was saying about a week or so ago, I was just like, when that came out, and even CNN was talking about the premiums going up, when that came out, I thought to myself, that alone would get Trump elected. That alone, because Obama had spent all this time, on his legacy of saying, like, you can, if you want to keep your doctor, you can, it's going to be cheap, it's going to be great. No, it's turned out to be a complete disaster.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I saw it coming. I've never signed up for it or whatever. I've never gone online. Mm-hmm. I was more of a tinfoil hat guy when I heard about it, and I was like, "Is this really happening?" I thought, "Well, that just sounds like a big database, like for people, like you know what I mean." That was more of my.
There's an aspect to that, yeah.
Yeah. So that was more of my Orwellian kind of weird take on it. But yeah, I never. That's why I kind of was like, you know what? It sounds like a failure. I can see how it's an unsustainable, and there we go again with an unsustainable system that Democrats have set up. Because, like you said, they're just going to milk the government for as much as they can take. Insurance agencies are not the most honest places.
No, they're not.
And then when you look at Obama's donors, that kind of gives you a bigger idea of why he was doing it. As far as who was giving him money, Goldman Sachs, people that are connected to these insurance companies by, if not donors, by owning them themselves, or if not by giving money to them as far as loans go. So it's all a big club and we're not in it, I guess you could say. And I feel like with Trump, there's actually hope that big club that's been around since after JFK will be broken up, hopefully. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I see this whole situation going. Everybody knows it's a failure. I haven't seen anybody talk, except for Obama, really. And even he's telling people not to, to vote early. hurry up and vote. Don't, hurry up.
Well, the other aspect that I didn't like was the fact that they were going to penalize you, that they were going to basically use the IRS as a means to penalize somebody if you didn't get it. And then that was upheld as constitutional, which completely blew my mind. I mean, forcing someone to buy a product, the government, I mean, that was stepping over the line, in my opinion.
That's a disaster. That's absolutely a disaster. Forcing anybody to buy anything, it flies in the face of everything that the founding fathers even stood for. So that's just insanity. I mean, I don't think that anybody could really argue for it unless you've read that huge, 22,000 pages of it.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Exactly. So I mean, that's kind of, they wanted to muddy the waters with that whole 22,000 pages, just I guess so people wouldn't pay attention, and it passed, and somebody's going to repeal and replace it. Now, replacing it is going to be a different story. I have no idea what they could even go to at this point.
Right.
But they can't be giving gifts to the insurance agencies and expect them to be honest.
Right.
That's just not going to work. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that too, that there was so much hope that young people were going to sign up for it in droves, and that it was going to be less older people and more younger people. That did not happen. The exact opposite happened.
Exactly. And again, that goes back to a system that they don't really do much research in. If they would have just looked at history and seen that, even Marxist, Leninist people back in the day were against, the socialist healthcare system for that exact reason. For me, it was a database. That's why, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with the Colorado laws or whatever, but even that, you have to get a card. That would even scare me, just because they know who you are now. Like, they know that guy is the guy that smokes weed or whatever, So again, I think into. Well,
I don't think they have a problem with that in Colorado, but anyway.
Yeah, you're right. I know some police officers have told me that it's so out there, it's crazy.
Well, let's talk about foreign policy.
Okay.
I have to commend you because you did some pretty good work on the whole. Remember the boy that was in the ambulance in CNN in Syria, in Aleppo. You know that place that Gary Johnson doesn't know the name of?
Yeah, right. They just bombed it a couple days ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you showed that there was a guy that was in the crowd that was filming the little boy in the ambulance, and you actually had a picture, and this is on Facebook that you did this, and then you had another picture of this guy, and he was a member of Al Nusra.
Correct.
So, I commend you on that one. I actually mentioned you on the show that when we talked about that issue. But talking about foreign policy, because I personally think that Obama's foreign policy, and I actually will say this, Trump did a good job in that third debate towards the end. They made a huge big deal about him saying that he would look at the results after the election and he would keep everybody a mystery. But what he said about Obama's foreign policy was very erudite and very spot on, I felt. And, so how do you think that is going to change? And a corollary to this question would be, how is our relationship with Russia going to change?
Okay, so the first to hit on the first question, as far as how is our foreign policy going to change?
Sorry, I'm good with 2-part questions, sometimes 3.
Okay, so here's how Obama has fought ISIS. When Secretary of State Clinton decided to overthrow Gaddafi, however you want to say it, he allowed for it and decided that he was going to pull out troops and let the rebels pretty much take over. Those same rebels who he armed became ISIS. That's not, I don't think that's not debatable. I'm assuming everybody knows that. So the foreign policy of Obama has been a disaster just because pretty much him and Clinton armed the rebels who later became ISIS, number one. Number two, he's very.
I will
friendly.
say this though, Rob. I think some of that did start under Bush. I will say that.
Yes. Oh yeah, I do not. I'm not going to agree with anything.
There was a lot of continuity between
Absolutely.
between Bush and Obama, a lot more than people think, and especially with that he kept the same Secretary of Defense. He kept Gates on for 2-3 more years.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So anyway, sorry, that's a digression, but
no, yeah, I agree with you. I think, to be completely honest, I think Cheney was running the whole thing. Bush was kind of just a puppet. That's my opinion of it.
Sure.
Not to say that Bush hasn't done evil things because he's a Bush, but I mean, they're just head of the CIA becomes your president. That's kind of iffy. You know what I mean? It's just kind of weird. But yeah, we can get into that whole thing with. I think Daddy Bush has been a big influence on a lot of the stuff that's gone on as far as foreign policy goes. So globalism is globalism. I don't think we need to, as far as Republican and Democrat, if you're a globalist, you're going to want to take over other countries. That's what you do. You do not care about people. You care about money. You care about power. So the Bushes, the Clintons, Obamas, they all really kind of fall into that same team, if you think about it. Obama sold his soul to Saudi Arabia. And what I mean by that is he's pretty much gone with whatever they like and whatever they want as far as the takeover in the Middle East. With the Gulf states, the House of Saud, that whole thing.
sure. Look what's going on in Yemen right now. Nobody's really talking about that.
Exactly. And the reason they're not talking about it is because there's a lot of covert operations. I'm assuming that nobody wants. If the gift that was given to the American people was that a cameraman watched as the plane got loaded with those $400 million. That was a gift to the media, because if we had not known about that, can you imagine? It would have just been another 400 million gone that that people couldn't account for.
Are you talking about what was given? You talking about what was given to Iran?
To Iran, correct.
Oh, okay.
So like he's laying down for Turkey and for Iran and the Gulf states, and it seems to me like the foreign policy is, keep out the good people and bring in the bad, and attack countries that the Saudi Arabians deem worthy of attack. And that's how it looks to me from, just zooming out and looking at what Obama's done. As far as ISIS and the whole caliphate or whatever, it's really strange. I mean, there's a lot of disinformation going around. I used to do a lot of research on it. That's how I got that picture from that guy that was al-Nusra,
right?
That was beheading a kid in the back of a truck.
Yeah, that was the point we made on this show, is everybody was talking about that child in the back of the ambulance when the same guys that were taking his picture had earlier beheaded a 12-year-old.
Right,
yeah,
right. And a lot of people think Trump's anti-Islam, and that's, again, another big misconception. I'm not anti-Islam. I have friends who are Islamic. I mean, it's not about that religion. I see a very big problem with a sect of Islam that people don't want to talk about. Yeah. There's a certain sect, and there's certain groups within it that see, I guess, vulnerable people that will just listen to the imams instead of reading what Muhammad truly had said. Yeah,
Wahhabism. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to go there. Yeah, but so my point is that there's definitely, it's just like in Catholicism. I grew up Catholic, actually, and being in Catholicism, around that, to stay away from certain priests that are going to do certain things to certain body parts of yours, if you know what I'm going with. So you do know that there's certain kids that are getting that, happening to them, the choir boys or whatever. Just there's sick people in every religion, is what I'm trying to get at. And there's sick people that'll try to take advantage of the youth in every religion. It's not just Islam. It's not just, you know what I mean? It's not one religion. It's just, why do bank robbers rob banks? Because that's where the money is. Right. So why do pedophiles go around, children and schools and, want to teach and want to, that's where the kids are. That's what they like. I mean, it's a common sense. So I think we've gone way off track, but as far as the foreign policy stuff goes, I mean, it really seems to me like it's protect Islam at all costs foreign policy. for whatever reason. I don't know if Obama's just being paid really well by them. I don't know if he's. I don't want to say he's Muslim. I don't know. I doubt it. Like I said, because he does a lot of weird stuff that Muslims wouldn't do. So I don't know. I just think
I think people get too hung up on that whole thing, whether he's
Right.
Muslim or he isn't. They
He's
get
just a
too
bubble.
hung up on that. I mean, this is the same relationship that we've had with Saudi Arabia for 70 years.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing. It's just the same people involved. So like
Right.
people get hung up on, is he a Muslim? Whatever. It's,
Right. It's not. The point is the fact that he's very, and I think it's a good question to ask, only because what people see as far as his behavior. But as far as like going into that, it really doesn't matter. He's a globalist. He likes money. He likes power above anything else. He hangs around with the Clintons. He's fighting for the Clintons. He knows he messed up by having that beobama@ameritech.net email. He knows he's going to go down if they really get into it. So I mean, he knows all these things. He's not a stupid man.
So
Yeah.
what do you think Trump will do to improve relations with countries that our relations are strained with, such as, I think the most important one would be Russia?
Right.
And how do you think that's going to, do you think that he would work with Russia to try to get rid of ISIS, to try to resolve the Syrian conflict? Do you also think, and also in that same debate, Trump talked a lot about Iran and almost casting Iran as being the enemy. Right. And that is something that us going after Iran would be inimical to closer ties with Russia, because Russia and Iran are allies with each other.
Correct.
So it's it doesn't make any sense to me in some ways.
Sure. I mean, I feel like when he talks about Iran, he's talking about the nuclear deal. Whenever he brings that up, I have no doubt that once he does get into office, and Iran and Saudi Arabia, even and Russia and all these people that want to make deals are going to sit at the table with him. I have no problem believing that, just because he's done it for so many years. And I kind of want to bring back that whole. You asked me earlier, how did Trump? How did I start following him? I guess, or whatever. After he announced, I was actually anti-Trump for about a day or two, just because I was like, this guy's joking, just like everyone else. I guess he's a joke. But then I used to read self-improvement, self-help, real estate kind of books, that kind of stuff. And I remember him saying in one of his books, he doesn't get into anything without knowing he's going to win. And that stuck with me in the book since I was, younger, before he became a presidential candidate. So I went back and I read some of the stuff he had written, and I was like, okay, he's pretty consistent. Let me research him. And the more I researched, the more I saw that he's had the same stances for, 30, 40 years. He hasn't changed anything. Whereas the people that he is going up against, you can even go online and see how Clinton's flip-flopped on gay marriage. She's flip-flopped on foreign policy, depending on where the wind turns, with the reset button, and now Russia's the enemy. So, it really just, it depends. Here's what I think is going to happen. First day, first 100 days, whatever. I feel like him and Putin are going to have Putin, and once he finds out, because a lot of this stuff he can't really know until he's president. But once he gets these advisors to tell him, look, Iran's not our enemy. We need to go after ISIS. These are the people that are, funding them. And once he finds out, the real intel, because I know that he's getting briefings, but it's a lot different when you're in the actual Oval Office that can make decisions. They're going to give you a lot better intel, from what I understand. I don't think Obama's getting the same intel that Hillary's getting. So, point being, I feel like he's going to take just the way he would take anything. Woman Rink, he saw that it was a failure, and he decided, let's see the best way to not only help myself, but help everybody else. That's kind of his motto. That's kind of his mentality. If you kind of notice, he does help himself, but he also enriches everybody else's life along with it. He's done that in business, and I feel like he'll do that in the Oval Office once he's there, definitely.
Okay. Before we get to the WikiLeaks and we get into some things about revelations about Hillary, I want to give the chance to these two guys, Rob One over here and Luke, to chime in if they got any questions for you.
What's going on, guys?
Or observations.
Yeah.
I I'm trying to just sit back and absorb it at this point, because I'm openly not a fan of Trump or Hillary or any options that we've had.
Right.
But I do. I mean, I definitely respect where you're coming from.
Thank you.
I don't know much about immigration. That was definitely interesting. But yeah, I don't really have a whole lot of questions at this point.
Luke?
Did we start? No, I'm just kidding.
This is our court jester, by the way. This is
What's going on, man? You and I would get along. Sure.
I try to be funny, and most of the time I fail.
Yeah, that's how it is. 90% failure rates usually how it goes.
Anything that you wanted to ask, Luke?
Not really. And you know, if you've listened to the show before, you could tell that I'm not big on politics.
Yeah,
Sure.
I, like a lot of other people, are just kind of exhausted by it at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So am I. So am I, man. It's.
I think all four of us are there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is exhausting. It's been a horrible campaign. Both sides have been really nasty. So it's taken out a lot just from the American people in general. But I mean, a lot of it's just common sense, what you believe in. If you believe that open borders are the way to go, then hey, man, by all means, vote for Hillary Clinton. If you believe that you don't need a gun, that the government is the only people that needs a gun, vote Hillary Clinton. If you believe the exact opposite of that, it's Trump. It's really an easy choice. I don't know how anybody's undecided at this, to be completely honest. It's just, when you look at their policies, it's night and day. That's how I see it. And go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I got something different to say.
You're what?
I say go ahead. Go ahead. I've got something unrelated to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was it. Really, it's a night and day issue. It's not muddied up at all. If you go to their sites, you can just check it out. And she always pushes her website because it has a bunch of stuff that you can buy, and it keeps popping up. There's a bunch of pop-ups. It's insane. The number of pop-ups she has on her website. Her internet staff or whatever needs to be fired, because I've closed her site more times than I've opened it. I'll put it that way. It's that bad. Yeah. So
well, let's talk about WikiLeaks. You know,
Sure.
I do not have time to go through all those emails and read all that stuff, and you probably have read a lot more of them. So what is in there that stands out to you that could be potentially damaging to her?
Everything. I'll give you something more, I guess precise. There's a lot of, you just get an overall idea of how she does her business, and it has a lot to do with, you help me, I'll help you. Everything's controlled. But something that can really hurt her was that Moroccan king thing. I mean, that right there, if that's not literal pay for play in every sense of the word, I don't know what is.
Oh, I haven't heard about this.
Yeah, the King of Morocco gave her $12 million. I'm sorry, gave William J. Clinton $12 million as a gift while she was Secretary of State. About 2 months later, I want to say it was in May when that gift was given to him. In July, Morocco got this really awesome weapons deal passed through that had to go through her office. Now they say, well, she didn't have anything to do with it or whatever, that's their excuse. But that right there tells me that if you can't prove a pay to play there, then something's wrong with the law. It's literally right there in your face. That one right there stood out to me. There's a lot of other stuff coming out, just again with the way they treat her internally. They have no respect for Hillary. It feels to me like they just are on her gravy train. You know what I mean? Like she's a horrible person, but they're getting paid by her, so they're going to have to do what they have to do to just get her in the office and just.
Are we talking about her support, like Huma Abedin and people like this?
Yes. Yeah, Brian Fallon, Abedin, Palmieri. Who's the other guy? Robbie Mook, that guy. They have this real like nasty, racist kind of. Like there's a real nasty tone in all these emails. I mean, there's another one by Robbie Mook that said something like "white people say it better" or something. Like it's just this real nasty, like, underlying, we hate everybody, like, we're better than them, but we have to kind of deal with them attitude. That's kind of what I've gotten from it, really. I mean, I've gone through so many. There's a lot of stuff in there that you can kind of dig into more, but I like looking at the big picture as far as how the campaign runs, and it runs like a well-oiled machine, but it's running to the wrong direction, if that makes sense. Everybody internally is fighting. They're very if you say something against them, they attack you. They called one Middle Eastern journalist a terrorist because he said something bad about Hillary Clinton once. Like, things like that are just, that's not the America I know. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not those aren't the people I grew up with. These people are very, like, catty and just, that's the best way I can explain it. It's just, it's just, the bombshells are in there. The bombshells are in there, but if the American people really just took a look at the big picture, they can see that this is a campaign that's just trying to prop up a puppet because there's a lot of money involved, and they're going to all lose their gravy train if she falls out or if she, gets, not doesn't get elected or whatever. So that's kind of how I feel they're, attacking Trump is, they're trying to go everything that is her weakness, they're attacking Trump on.
I was about to say, because a lot of what you just said, I mean, is stuff that I've heard about Trump as well. So this is
exactly
the same kind of thing.
Yes, that's one of Alinsky's. I think it's rule 4 in his rules for radicals was attack your enemy at your weakest point or something. So that's what they do. I mean, that's why they go after Russia. The uranium deal is one of her weakest points. If he just knocked that out of the park a few times, people would get into their head. But they're attacking him on Russia, saying that I've had people accuse me of being a Russian hacker. so that's why I'm saying it's that bad. Like, so it's good disinformation, but if you just basically take whatever they're attacking Trump or saying about Trump and flip it and look into it, you'll see that Hillary is connected in some way to something like that that's bad. Yeah.
Let's talk about, because one thing that came out today was they were talking about these latest emails that they found in Anthony Weiner's computer, which I thought it was interesting that Huma Abedin, well, it's her computer as well, and I thought it was interesting that they were all in a folder called life insurance. I found that really strange.
Yeah.
But this came out today that those emails, the FBI has just said that there's nothing really pertinent to the previous investigation. So I don't know if that's been put to rest now. It was just extraordinarily bad timing that all happened. And of course, Bill Maher, I was watching him and he was throwing a fit about how the FBI was politicized and all this. And I'm just thinking, no. He calls Trump a whiny little bitch, but he was whining a lot on that show. And it's like they're just doing their job. I mean, they're following up on a lead, obviously, but
right.
That's neither here nor there. But there's other things that, I've been hearing all this stuff and I see all this stuff on Facebook. Like I said, I don't really have time to look into it, but
Sure.
This is like the pedophile ring aspect of this. What's going on here? Because we were talking about this in relation to another guest that we had on last time.
Right.
And do you know much about what's going on with this?
I do actually. I don't know if I'm an expert on it actually, but I do know I've been reading the chans or whatever and going on Reddit and just kind of going. There's a really good. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the Donald subreddit.
No.
Okay, so on Reddit, there's.
I think Luke does the Reddits. I don't mostly do the Reddits.
No, okay, I'm just Facebook.
Oh, wow, okay, yeah, guys, it's a huge bank of information about just everything Trump. It's you can just type in the Donald in Google, and it's really one of the best places. That's where I get a lot of my information. So it's one of the best places to kind of just, and it's not bipartisan at all. It's very pro-Trump, but it does have a lot of the breaking news that I post and stuff. It comes from there.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a lot of people that basically the consensus on this new FBI stuff. I feel bad for Comey. Let's get that out there. I feel really, really horrible for him just because of the position he's in. He's really kind of damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. That's how I see it. That being said, he and other people have come out and said that there are 2 investigations, one into the emails and one into the Clinton Foundation. He made a statement today saying that what he said back in July, which was before we knew about the Clinton Foundation, was pretty much okay, or I guess he was not going to follow that. I have a feeling, and this is just my theory, that they're just taking resources that they need to go after the foundation. That's just because he didn't say anything. He didn't mention any foundation or anything else. He left it really vague on purpose. And if you work or if you have worked around intel circles or people that work in that kind of stuff, there's a lot of stuff that they leave out on purpose to kind of I guess signal the other guys that this is where you need to go instead of here. So I think that's what he was doing, to be honest. That kind of was what it looks like, and I think that they're going to run with it and try to say that there's nothing there, and I think that that's just going to kind of dig their hole even more. Mm-hmm. That's how I see it.
Is this pedophile ring? Is this something that's associated with, what is it, Jeffrey Epstein?
Yes.
Is this what this is about? I've heard Trump being linked to that as well.
Yes. So Epstein is linked to Trump through the Black Book. So is Oprah Winfrey, though. So that's about as much as he's linked to him.
Let's explain though first about what this is all about. But Jeffrey Epstein, what's going on? What is going on with him?
Okay, so from my research, what Jeffrey Epstein or who he is a hedge fund manager for private clients who he won't say who they are. And he pretty much is a jet setter. He owns a private island in I want to say American Virgin Islands. I don't think they're the BVIs. I think it's the other ones. But in the Virgin Islands, he owns a private island that has been nicknamed Lolita Island, I think.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's certainly telling.
Yeah, no, and I've got pictures and stuff. I can definitely send them to you if you want. Like not of anything bad. It's just of the island and some real estate listings and stuff that I found of it back in the day. But yeah, so this island is purported to be the place where they film all these pedophile rings happening. And the more you dig on Epstein, I found this out. This is something I haven't really told many people, but what I found out was he's really into human eyeballs as far as displays of them in his house. And the weird connection with that is if you look at old pictures of Jimmy Savile, that other pedophile guy.
Yeah, we've talked about this. Uh-huh.
He has an eyeball ring.
Okay.
In his old pictures, and it looks like a human eye. So that was a kind of
gotcha.
Yeah. That was a kind of weird connection between those two guys and the whole pedophile thing. I don't know if that has anything to do with anything. Again, that's just something I connected on my own that was weird. But anyway, so this Jeffrey Epstein guy was kind of like a mover and shaker. So he knew pretty much all the rich people in Manhattan, New York, pretty much the whole state, really. And then as far as LA as well, like all the celebrities and stuff. So he had this black book. And I think it was like 2008. He and Ghislaine Maxwell, or Ghislaine, I don't know how to even pronounce her name, but she is his, I guess, his finder for these. She finds these girls for him. He says it's his girlfriend. They don't really look like boyfriend and girlfriend, but whatever. She is the daughter of a Mossad agent from back in the day, Robert Maxwell. I don't know if y'all have talked about him before. I
think I know what you're talking about. Yeah. But
he was murdered in the ocean, like he was thrown off his yacht.
Yeah. Okay. I know what you're talking about.
So that guy is Ghislaine Maxwell's father.
Yeah, he ran a newspaper.
Yes.
Yeah, in Britain. Yeah.
Right, and it came out later that he was a Mossad double agent for Mossad and all this other kind of weird stuff that was connected to him. So if you go back, she's been in the public eye for years. Back when Robert F. Kennedy, JFK Jr. actually, when he was going around the Manhattan circles and the rich people, I guess you could say, there's some articles where she comes out with him. So she's been this Ghislaine Maxwell's really, really well connected. Now I don't know how that connects to the pedophile thing, except for that she is now Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend. This same girl who's connected to Epstein, was seen at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. So that's the kind of the connection. And then as far as the actual island goes, Bill Clinton has been on Jeffrey Epstein's airplane, I think a total of like 300 times. They always say it's for fundraising, but I think 30 of those times he's asked for no Secret Service detail to go along with them. Yeah, so it's just, it's everything's right there in front of you except the pictures of them actually doing it with underage girls.
Well, I saw somebody post something today about, I think it was William Ramsey. He posted something about, there was a picture of one of these underage girls with Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a few actually of, I think it was Prince Albert, if I'm not mistaken. That it was taken with an underage girl. And if you zoom in a little more, you can actually see the person taking the picture is that Ghislaine Maxwell woman. So here's kind of my theory on it, honestly. I think Epstein is either hired or paid by either Israeli intelligence or one of them to blackmail politicians, to have blackmail info on them by, whining and dining them, taking them to this island, getting this video of them, whatever, and then just using it as blackmail. Because everything I've found, it's almost like I hit a roadblock wherever I hit. And honestly, the guys I've asked, they say, yeah, it sounds like he's intel. Like when you're deep embedded like that, a lot of roadblocks happen on purpose, like to kind of the breadcrumbs don't really match up and stuff. And it feels to me like, just the research I've done, it feels to me like that's what he is. He's kind of an agent, and so is she, of like, to have power over these politicians. That's what they do. And that's what they did with Bill Clinton, I'm assuming. Because again, I mean, it's really strange that the Monica Lewinsky thing happened, and he's still out there just okay. Like it's very strange, just the whole situation of how the liberal side can say that it's okay to have not only a child molester, that's what's been coming out, but a rapist in the White House. Like it's just, I don't understand how the mental gymnastics that goes on to be able to say like, oh, he's not running for president is what they say, but like they made fun of Melania saying she wasn't like presidential material for like a speech she did or something. But they're not saying anything about Bill Clinton's rape allegations. It's just the mental gymnastics is weird. It's hard for me to kind of wrap my mind around it. But yeah, that's my theory on Epstein, is that he is a double agent, maybe trying to get blackmail material on all these guys. And
which has happened many times. I mean, that's unfortunately that's nothing very unusual.
Correct.
And that's probably in many ways how, unfortunately, how our government runs in some ways.
Yeah. Well, being from Catholic upbringing, that's also how they run. I mean, a lot of these guys have the same look, I guess you could say. I mean, Epstein just has that weird kind of like Ted Danson in like Creepshow look. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's just very.
That's a nice '80s reference there.
Yeah. I love that show. But so Epstein. Here's the thing, though. People are getting their hopes up on this. I really don't see it coming out, even if there is any truth to it, just because it's so bad.
Right. Well,
you might hear about it like, some pedo ring was broken up or whatever, but you're not going to hear that Bill Clinton was in a video. You know what I mean? There's no way that's going to happen unless he really screws them over.
And you know what? It could also bounce back to the other side. It could bounce back to the Republicans and the conservatives, because if you've ever studied the Franklin cover-up, that it was primarily Republican based, and some of the things that you see that go on at Bohemian Grove, that is a mostly Republican club. So this stuff happens on both sides, and it could bounce back. So yeah, I agree with you. This is probably not going to go anywhere, honestly.
Right. Yeah. But I think a lot of it, maybe it was even misinformation. Who knows? I mean, all I can say is what I find, and then from there kind of make my conclusions. What I do know that isn't something that should be taken lightly is the Clinton Foundation. That's 100% crooked in every single way, shape, and form. I've looked into it so many times. I've looked into David Brock's foundations. It's all interconnected. It's insanity that they're even getting away with it. The only thing I can think of is that there's somebody in the Justice Department that is squashing all of these investigations. Because I don't know if you've ever heard of Vessel News. I post their links every now and then. But a good friend of mine, Joshua, who actually writes for them, told me that he was going to have a guy that works with Charles Ortel, the guy that's actually investigating the Clinton Foundation in New York City. And he's just broke down how it works, how it's a scam, what they scam, who they scam, and how much money they take in. I mean, it's all there. It's all on his website. It's crazy.
Of which, by the way, you know, the Bushes, the George H.W. is involved with the Clinton Foundation as well.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and one point that I was going to make about the Bush family, you know, it was interesting to find out that the guy that, you know, that whole video, the grab the pussy video, that
Right.
Billy Bush is actually the nephew of George H.W. Bush and the cousin of George W.
Oh yeah, it goes, and not only.
And then they were talking about this whole, like, there was this rumor that he was going to make millions off of his deal to leave TMZ or whatever.
Right.
And they were saying it was 12 million. Well, it turned out not to be that, but it was still a pretty hefty chunk of change. And so that's interesting. I think that video probably actually came from Billy Bush.
It did. It did. Not only did it probably come from him, I mean, to think that wasn't some kind of a Hillary, somehow, if not her personally, maybe one of her people that were holding on to it until they needed it. I mean, that just screams of just somebody throwing it out there right when it needed a hit. And it worked. It did work. I heard a lot of people saying it was over, that they couldn't support him. Even Jason Chaffetz came out and said that. To be honest, I mean, what that was I've never said that. Personally, I've never said grab her by the pussy. That's just kind of a silly thing to say more than anything. But I've said some lewd stuff. I mean, I've been drunk. I've been at bars. I've you know what I mean? You do that. You're a human being now.
Everybody has said something terrible at one point or the other.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, if that's going to be the standard that all politicians are held to from now on, there will never be another male or female truthful politician ever again. You're going to have fake plastic people going up and being politicians, and that's not what you want. That's how I see it. Because you can't have said anything ever since the beginning of time, since you were born, or it's going to be held against you. Is what it kind of showed and signaled to everybody, and to me too. I'm pretty sure I have a video out there somewhere that I'm taking a shot and, you know, doing crazy stuff. So, I mean, it's just a matter of somebody finding that and then holding that against you. I think that's kind of a bad tactic, if you ask me, because we're humans. We make mistakes. Donald Trump's been in the public eye for 30 years. If that's the worst thing they can find on Donald Trump, man, he deserves a shot of beer.
Well, Rob, thank you so much, brother. We're gonna get going here, but tell everybody where they can contact you, and if you got any, like, what your web presence is, and what you're gonna be working on.
Sure. I'm actually working on the WikiLeaks stuff right now. I'm with Vessel News. You can find some of my stuff that I've written out there. It's vesselnews.com. You can also check out on Facebook, just my post. It's The Nighttime is my I guess my profile, except that the E at the end is a 3, just because I wanted to be super cool and hacker-like, I guess. But yeah, so it's The Nighttime, and it's also my Twitter. Now it's been suspended for some reason lately. I actually had 4 Twitter accounts suspended in one day, so that was kind of a crazy day. But Twitter right now is official Trumpster, I think. I'm not too sure because, like I said, I got it suspended. But the best way to contact me would probably just be my Facebook. It's facebook.com/The Nighttime with a 3 instead of an E at the end.
Okay. Well, excellent, Rob. Thank you so much. And it's hold on for us. And, guys, we will be back to continue part 2 of the election special with Scotty Roberts and Rocky Stucci on Conspirnormal. All right, guys, we are back on Conspirnormal, and we have on the line one of the two guests we thought was coming on, and that is Rocky Stucci. Scotty,
he's probably studying some biblical verses or something. So he might have got tied up somewhere. He really don't believe in the Bible, but he still has to study his verses.
Well, maybe he's got his monocle on, and he's his magnifying glass, and he's looking at the Bible code or something. I don't know,
brandy
but
and a fire in the
he's
background.
MIA.
He is MIA. He's probably reading up on spirit cooking. I swear to God, one time I was listening to one of his interviews. It might have even been with you guys, and somebody asked him like a 20-second question, and Scotty had a 45-minute answer for one question. I swear to God. And Scotty talks to flashlights, by the way.
Oh, does he? Explain this. What's going on here? You guys were just at some paranormal event not too long ago, right?
Well, he went to one on Friday night, because I don't know if you guys ever seen any clips from some of the video that we did down at Faribault. And some of the people that go down there, they like to talk to flashlights, when they're doing paranormal research. And I'm sorry, folks, if you talk to flashlights, hey, that's your prerogative. I don't respect that, but I'll whatever. Just shut up. So when we were doing Saturday night, we had a sold out crowd, and I just wanted to tell everybody before we even started that Scotty talked to flashlights, and his face turned just cherry red. Well, no, he's like, I don't talk to flashlights because I was trying to tell the group how flashlights don't work. I says, that's right. So you're trying to tell the group how flashlights don't work. So you asked the flashlight a question. So yes, Scotty, you talk to flashlights, brother. And I got to say this. I went to school for electronics, so I can clear my mind and feel better about this. Folks, when you use a mag flashlight and you turn it halfway to sit there and talk to ghosts, what's happening is called the arc and spark effect. So you're creating that positive connection close enough to the charge of the battery. It's creating a static charge, and sooner or later there's going to be enough charge there to turn that light on. So no, it's not a ghost answering your questions. Thank you very much.
But it always works so well on ghost hunters, Rocky. My world is crushed.
Yeah, I know. Mine too. About as crushed as it was when I found out that last week was their last episode. My God, we should have celebrations for that.
Something tells me you're not a very big Ghost Hunters fan here.
I used to be, but the thing is, it just became so lame. And here's the thing: if you want to let's talk paranormal for a second. When you look at somebody like Ghost Adventures, at least there's substance and some kind of drama or something happening in the show that keeps you drawn in. Ghost Adventures has become so boring and so much politics in the background, the things that happen off the air that you become so turned off.
Ghost Adventures or Ghost Hunters are both.
Ghost Hunters.
Yeah.
You would think that they would have had for their final episode like a special thank you show to all the people that have paid their bills for the last 12 years and maybe brought in some people from the past and they had a 2-hour special and just says, you know what, guys? You made this possible. Thank you all so much for all your loyalty to us over all these years. We're moving on to bigger and better things, but this last show is for you. And they couldn't even do that.
What did they do?
Nothing.
I didn't even see it.
It was just like a regular another episode. They knuckled each other at the end of the show and said, on to the next. And that was it. That was their last episode ever.
Wow.
So,
not to get too much on this, but they took a big hit with me with the whole whatever that was in Grant's jacket in 2008. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that?
Right. Yeah, absolutely I do. Absolutely I do. But, and you lured, there's another show too. A good friend of ours, the one from Britain or whatever, the one from England. What am I trying to think of, guys? You know what I'm talking about? The Most Haunted, I think is the name of the show.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And they got busted. They literally tied a rope around a guy's waist and tried to sell people that he was being drugged by a ghost, and you can see the rope as clear as day. And
that show was ridiculous. It really was.
It's like there's no way in holy hell that you can go to all these locations and have that much activity at all these locations every time you go. And so it's become so staged. And you know what? The reality is that most of the time you go to these places, nothing happens, sometimes ever. But, and I think that's what I think they're kind of misleading people on is the fact and the reality of what it's really like.
Mm. Yeah, it's true. And speaking about misleading reality, here we are.
Scotty saying he was going to be here at 6 talking about misleading.
Yeah, well, yeah, there
I kind of want to smack him. I'm not going to lie. I kind of want to smack him right now. You know, he abandoned us, man.
Yeah, we feel like abandoned children right now. Daddy, when are you coming home?
I'm sending him a text right now. F you, Scotty. And Luke said he wants a spoon with you, but you're still a punk.
Well, hey, Rocky, you know, you and Scotty and John Ward, you guys have been talking about a lot on the Situation Room. Yeah. I've been listening. I've really been enjoying it lately.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And you know, I find the give and take really good, really refreshing. I like how you guys don't just stick to what's going on with, you know, domestic politics with this election, but also with, you know, international stuff as well. I've had John on the show back in the summer, and we had a really good show about like kind of like how, well, basically it came down to like how political realignments were kind of shifting. And but I want to get into let's talk a little bit about the election. I'd like to know where you stand on the election and what's going on, how you feel about these candidates.
Well, you know, okay, I'll break it down. And you know, if you listen to my show and if you listen to my views on the Sit Room, I think there's no doubt that my political views are leaning more towards the conservative side of things. But I don't like to label myself as any particular party, liberal, conservative, left, right, Republican, Democrat. I don't want to label myself anymore because I think our problems are much bigger than taking a side. I have gotten grief from friends of mine in the conservative radio industry because I will not grab my ankles for Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. And here's the reason why is that we can go back historically to any presidential campaign, and we are constantly being sold lip service. Yes, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I promise you this and I promise you that. But what are the chances? And if you look historically, statistically, at the amount of things that actually get done that they say they're going to do in a political campaign, the majority does not even get done. I mean, look at Obama. Of all the things he said he was going to do in 2007 for the 2008 presidency, he hasn't done 60-70% of the things he actually said he was going to do, but yet he still got a Nobel Peace Prize. Now, Donald Trump, he has no political history. He has nothing to validate his true motives. And, you know, a lot of ways that we can look at a candidate is to look at their voting history to see where they truly stand on issues. We don't have that with Donald Trump. Do I like what he says? Absolutely, I do. I think anybody who is old school rooted American likes what he says. But right. I cannot just jump on the Trump bus. I cannot do it. And then we have Hillary Clinton. What do I need to say? You know, when you have somebody like Hillary Clinton, it blows my mind how people cannot see through the veil. They cannot pull themselves out of this matrix of this. Gentlemen, I'm telling you right now that our political system is the most corrupt system in the entire world. And I ask people, tell me countries that we have actually liberated. I mean, we're fighting 5 illegal wars right now that Hillary was a part of, getting in there, funding terrorism. We're creating enemies and fighting these enemies. We're creating a worldwide panic. We're creating this forced immigration, and she's part of this.
Yeah.
So it's hard to look domestically at our problems because when you start understanding things, and this is why I love the Sit Room, is that we talk about global events. And when you start understanding the global events and oil and pipelines and trade routes, you start understanding how dirty we really are, how our political party is really destroying lives around the world. And then you wonder why there's terror groups that cannot stand us.
Yeah.
So we need a major worldwide shift. Do I want peace? Absolutely, I do. Do I, some liberals think that I am this vicious, crazy, Bible-thumping conservative. And no, I want what everybody else wants. I want to be able to wake up and know my family's safe. I want to know that my children have a future. I want to know that this country, no matter how you want to argue how it was established, I want to know that this country has a future, that the people in this country have a future, that people that come to this country are going to love this country as much as we love this country. That's what I want.
Well, Rocky, do you see, because, I mean, it's a very good point about Trump that a lot of these promises that he makes they can be pie in the sky, whereas Obama's promises in 2008 were very much pie in the sky. We made a parallel early on in this campaign. Do you remember that silly thing about like the what were they called? The Freedom Girls or whatever? And Yeah, they were these little. They're singing the song about Trump, and then you had we were comparing that to 2008 when there were these songs about Obama that were being sung by children, and we were sitting there saying we were talking about the parallels between the two campaigns. Here's yet another person that is promising all this change just from the other side of the political aisle, and how much of that is he actually going to be able to get done? We just got finished talking to Rob Gray, who is a big Trump supporter, and his big passion is immigration and fighting illegal immigration. And we were talking about the wall. So are we really going to have this thing implemented? I mean, he's not, the president, thankfully, is not a dictator, even though it's becoming more and more like that. But he still cannot, without Congress, pass this stuff. And nobody seems to realize that.
Let me ask you, how much in your heart do you actually think that he is actually going to build a wall?
It's about maybe 30% at this point for me.
You're right, because there's a lot of ropes to go through in order for that wall to be built. Am I against it? You know, do I want a wall? Do we need a wall? Do we need it like an electric fence? Do we need something? You know, we don't even know how effective we are right now on our borders because our border agents don't even have they can't even do their own job. They have these major restrictions. I got a good friend of mine from Arizona. He's part of a border patrol group, and they catch 30, 40 illegals coming into this country. Half the time they catch them with huge amounts of narcotics, and the narcotics get seized, and then they're told to release them, to release these illegals coming in this country. So we don't even know how effective we could be without a wall if our agents that take the oath to protect our borders actually could protect our borders and detain illegals coming into this country, and there is no consequence to come into this country. What do we have? We have 200 immigration judges in our country. So if somebody gets arrested for being here illegally, sometimes it takes 2 to 3 years before they even get in front of a judge. By that time, they're gone.
We're going to start seeing Mexican ninjas.
Well, we are going to start seeing. And here's the thing: is that I don't have a problem with some of the hardest working people I know are Mexicans or from South America, Central America. I really. You know, you talk about the rape epidemic, 80% of Mexican women do get raped by coyotes and other Mexican men while they're coming into this country. That's a fact. But our problem isn't the Mexican people. If we just research, and you guys are fully aware of this, but, you know, down in South America and Central America, the cartels run those countries.
Right.
They are vicious countries. People are dying every day from drug narcotic warfare. If I lived there, I would want to get the hell out of there too. And if coming to this country or coming here to have a baby, what they call anchor babies, or whatever you want to call it, coming here to have a baby, to make that child an American citizen, to try to somewhat ensure a better future for your child, how do you blame them? Because
who wants to live in a third world hellhole? I mean, just look at your own ancestors, Rocky. You think about it. Italian. Right. I mean, a lot of people from Italy, because Italy was a fairly poor country, at least the South,
sure was.
And they're basically escaping the same kind of situation.
Well, I think so. In regards to immigration, and this is not in defense of Donald Trump, I think this is a greater scope of the reality of what the issues align with when it comes to immigration, is that we have created a world that absolutely hates this country. And the majority of the world that hates this country is the Middle East and Africa. Right now we are fighting 5 illegal wars in 5 different countries. And to my understanding, maybe wrong, but Congress has to approve war. But we have these new laws now with war on terrorism, so we don't need congressional approval to go anywhere in the world to fight war on terrorism. So when we go to a country like Iraq, we go to a country like Syria. We go to countries like Africa, and we completely destabilize their entire way of life. So for one, yes, we force immigration, but there's a reason that there's been such huge growth in terrorism is because these people are bloodthirsty for the people that destroyed their life, which is America, which is our military, which is our greedy political figures that want oil and natural resources from these countries. And these are proven facts, gentlemen. I know some people don't want to go down that road, but this is what we're doing. We did not liberate Iraq. We have no intention to liberate Syria. We did not liberate Venezuela. We did not liberate Panama. We invaded them. and we took everything that they have. We invaded them. That's what we did. So now what the problem is that even in the Canadian border, because now a lot of them are, if you look at British Columbia and the amount of the rise in Muslims there, it's growing. But we are having a crap ton of these Middle Easterns that are coming up through California, San Diego, Arizona. And these people that are coming in have major terroristic ties. Mm-hmm. So to me, that is a major national threat. And I'm not saying block all Muslims out of this country. Look at my friends list. I got tons of Muslim friends. But what I'm trying to say is that there has to be a better form of security. We got to be able to understand who's coming to this country, why they're coming to this country, and how long they're going to be in this country. Because there's people in here that have been on visas that are 2-3 years past their expiration date from their visa. So we need to start worrying about the security. And we're not becoming isolationists. I know John always calls us isolationists. It's not that we're becoming isolationists. It's just we need to regroup in this country first. Middle class is at the lowest it's ever been. Welfare is at the highest it's ever been. And we are crumbling within. And on top of that, we are putting ourselves in danger from a world threat. Sorry, that was a long answer. I feel like Scotty.
No, that was a great answer. And I want to add to that, too, that, you mentioned this kind of briefly, but any kind of restrictions or any kind of plans that we put into place now, it's similar. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. We're not getting to the root cause, where the root cause is us meddling into all kinds of other countries' affairs where we don't belong, where we're after oil, where we're trying to give, so-and-so who's got a company that's a friend of somebody in the government, the go ahead to rebuild or to do this or that. And it's this big money corporation bullshit that's behind all of these little situations we've got ourselves in that nobody's focusing on or talking about.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think our media does such a brilliant job because our media is sold out. I mean, we have 5-6 corporations that own 90% of the mainstream media in this country and probably throughout the world. And you can all go back all the way to 1965 where the CIA was being interviewed by our Congress, and the CIA even admitted that they have people that are in our media and sell stories to our media sources or our media outlets.
Mm-hmm. Operation Mockingbird.
Operation Mockingbird. You got Operation Northwoods. But see, people don't want to go down that road because it's too conspiratorial for them, or they think it's too conspiratorial, and they think that they got to put on a tinfoil hat. But when you start understanding Operation Mockingbird, we start understanding the infiltration of CIA and other agencies that are destroying our what used to be a news source. We are being fed, we are being engineered to believe a very specific way and to justify and feel like we're doing the right thing by going into these other countries and literally destroying them. And I got a problem with that. I really do.
Yeah, well, and the way I always try to put it is that the media, social media also as well, but mainstream media and news, and it's such a powerful tool. I mean, we know that it has a huge influence over the average population, that there's no reason whatsoever to think that they would not use that for their own agenda. I mean, they'd be ridiculous not to.
Right. So what's the ultimate? See here, and this is where I sit here and scratch my head all the time. Is what is the overall? What is the end game? I guess is the way to ask that. What is the end game without this entire world collapsing?
Right. I don't know. That's it really worries me about the future, and it's definitely got to worry you. I mean, I hear you talk about it all the time about you're worried about your children and what's going to happen. I think you're more worried about them. Yeah.
Just like I worry about Scotty talking to flashlights. How you doing, Scotty?
I don't talk to flashlights.
You talk to flashlights, bro.
They talk to me.
Welcome, Scotty.
Hey, thank you, Adam. Sorry I'm late.
So tell us, Scotty, what's going on, man? Why? I mean, here we are. It's 6:42. You're 42 minutes late. Tell us what happened, brother.
Because I'm 42 years too old. No, I fell asleep on the sofa. My son ran out my phone battery. So my little boy was playing games on my phone. I had an alarm set on there, and I fell asleep watching TV.
We thought you were studying Bible code, Scotty.
We thought maybe you were doing some Bible research.
Well, that's the likely excuse, isn't it?
You know, Scotty.
I've been found out.
Last time we had you on the show, I just wanted to share with you that I got an email not too soon afterwards that said that you were a very hateful person, and that they would never listen to my show again if I had you back on. So I guess I just lost that. I just lost that listener, I suppose. But
I suppose now that I'm back.
Well, Scotty, what did Scotty say that was so hateful?
Yeah,
I don't really know. Probably because he supports Trump.
Have they ever listened to anything I've ever had to say?
Oh wow, Adam! Not only are you going to lose a listener, they're going to like yank your tag tonight after Rocky and me.
Well, hey Scotty, did you go to the Trump rally?
I did not. I got tickets to go, and I tried to get Rocky to go with me, and Lisa wouldn't let him.
Why do you got to say it like that for? I was going to have Rocky go with me.
My wife couldn't go with me. I couldn't get anybody to go. And I thought, it's fun. I want to go see the Trump rally, but I'm not going to go by myself. It's like going to watch, I don't know, the new Star Trek movie. You want to take somebody with you.
Well, let me get your thoughts, Scotty, on what's going on with the election right now. Where are you at? Do you still kind of support Trump? Do you have a more, do you think that you think he's going to win? What's your prediction?
Scotty said he was.
I'm going to channel John Ward. Scotty's a Trumper humper.
You Trumper humper.
Trumpy humper, you. How's it in the Trumpo humper world? So, I'll tell you this. You said, am I still kind of going to support Donald Trump? I'll tell you what, and Rocky can attest to this. You could never have said to me, are you kind of supporting Donald Trump? I've always been a supporter of Donald Trump's, and I'm not one of those guys, I think, that has gone out there and is mindless about why I have supported him since before he even announced. And, but there are people out there, I think that people only support Trump because they're mindless or because they're rednecks that can't, that don't know anything about the issues, or that they can't think for themselves, or whatever the case may be. You've heard all the arguments. And so I have supported him all the way through. There's only a couple of times, and again, Rocky could attest to this as well, only a couple of times where I went, boy, I'm wondering about him, and I want to look into this thing, and I can't remember what the particular thing was. But no, I've never not supported him throughout the election, but I think my support is also one that is done on a thinking man's level. I don't look at him as being somebody who is bad for the country or the lesser of two evils or anything. Evil. Yeah, not just evil, it's evil. And and then people, I get people asking me all the time, and sorry, that's a train in the background. You caught me just at the right time today.
I thought those were sound effects. I was like, wow, that's good stuff.
Is that a sound cannon outside your door? Is that what's going on? You got some riot control?
Yes, yeah, no, it's the boxcars going by, because Hitler is re-embodied in Trump.
Wow, that was racist.
There you go. Wow, racist.
That was racist, Scott. There goes another listener, Adam.
I have a big problem with all the people
loosen them left and right.
Strike it from the record.
Right. The Adam Sane followership dropped off dramatically this last Sunday night. We're not quite sure why. But I have a big problem with people that will say, how can you support him? He's a xenophobe. He's a racist. He's a bigot. He's a womanizer. He's all these things. And I just want to sit back and, kind of give him the little golf clap and go, hey, that's very nice. You've just repeated the sensationalist headlines verbatim. And do you read anything other than, or listen to, or watch, or dig any deeper than the sensational headlines? And what the media, and by the way, Trump's rant at the media, that ain't nothing new. I've known this since before the Reagan years. We've known how the media slants and how the media distorts things. Rocky and I, after the last election, in the last couple of years, we were talking about, Rocky, what was the site with the film about how
Bearable.
No, how they distorted the
last
election. Palin.
Yeah, 2008, how
and-
Obama won the presidency, and Sarah Palin, whatever.
There you go. And I can't think of the name of the site off the top of my head, so it doesn't matter.
Well, hey, Scotty, we were talking, Rocky and we were talking about, Trump making promises. And
Sure.
one of the things we talked about was the wall. I guess that's the big one. That's the big promise, right? So we were talking about the fact that he may not be able to live up to those promises. So what do you think? Do you think that it's because we were kind of comparing it to Obama in 2008, how Obama made a lot of promises and that just have not been kept?
Well, that's very true. I think what Trump did was he came out very early and said, here's the things that need doing. I'm going to make no excuses for him if he can't keep a promise he makes. I'll call him on him, just like we do everybody else. But I remember when he first came out, he was coming out saying, these are the things I am going to do. And it won a lot of support. And then you saw about midway through the election process, even the primary process, I believe, you started to see him pulling back a little bit from the whole wall issue and so on. And I think that's as he was looking at the reality of what it would take to build that wall as opposed to rhetoric. Now, is he still coming out just as strong? And that's his big, strong selling point now, is building the wall? No, but that's what the media wants to hold him to. That all by itself, that issue and the way it is portrayed in the press is something that should let people know how the press operates and who the press coronates ahead of time, because they're holding him to things he said. And so, he flip-flops all over every issue. Well, the one thing to already keep in mind is that, and we all know this, that Trump is not a seasoned politician. Trump is a beginner politician. Trump is a businessman who works to get things done. Now, as a businessman, he could have DSG put behind. Somebody just said to me today, it's a good friend of mine that runs a fireworks business up here in the cities. And he said, I don't even have a business card anymore. I used to have my name, and I used to have DSG behind my name. That's all I put for all the businesses I run. DSG, what does that mean? He goes, well, he says, I'm sorry, GSD. He says, gets shite done, was his title. And I think that's what Trump is all about. He's about the bottom line. He's about saying, there's a goal I want to have, and I want to get that thing done. How are we going to do it? Here's my goal. He will state a goal. I would do that. Did that with the Paradigm Symposium. I do that with everything we're involved. Rocky and I do it with the radio all the time. This is what we want to do. And then you start looking at the reality and say, do I have to pull that back a bit? Do I have to modify that a bit? And the only problem is in the election, when you've got the press that has already coronated the other candidate, you're going to see that brought up over and over and over again. So Trump today, what does he say? He still insists he's going to build a wall. I don't have any problem with it. I do not think that's xenophobia. I do not think that is isolationism at all. I think we have all kinds of protections put into the United States that are not isolationist in nature, because it protects us from what's on the other side of the border.
I was just talking. We were talking to our guests before, and I was just talking about I don't really have a problem with a wall on the border. I mean, I don't have an issue with it, but I do think there should be some kind of program to filter the good from the bad. But that being said, I want to look at maybe, and also to your point about the media bias. I mean, if you look at CNN, and primarily I watch CNN because MSNBC is way to the left and Fox is way to the right. I know, Scotty.
And CNN is owned by the CIA.
But well, yeah, okay. But you might get more of a balance. But even them, okay, we're just saying, 3 weeks ago, oh, it's in the bag for Hillary. She's got it. Trump's not going to win. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't think so. So let's talk about predictions, because I was listening today. I actually turned CNN back on, and they were talking about how in Michigan, which has been leaning Democrat, right? The light blue state. They said that Hillary is down 4 points above Trump, where before she had been around 8. Now, these are polls. Take of that what you will. But I really think that Trump is going to win primarily because of Michigan and because of the state you guys are in, Wisconsin, because I think that those two states were probably going to go solidly for him. So it's going to be interesting. So what do you think, Scotty? Rocky, do you think that's going to happen?
Go ahead, Scotty.
Well, I'll tell you this. When I drive around Wisconsin, about the only place in Wisconsin that's probably going to support Trump is going to be Madison. And you know why? Madison, the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Wait, support Trump or Hillary?
They'll support Hillary. I'm sorry. You know why?
What about Milwaukee, though?
Milwaukee, maybe. You're going to find your city centers are going to be mostly because you've got a liberal-based university in, first of all, in Madison. What are universities filled with? They're filled with millennials. What are millennials generally made up of nowadays? Brains full of liberal progressive mush. And there goes another 2 listeners of your show. Here, let me put
and a couple co-hosts.
Yeah.
Hey,
Disclaimer will be this: the opinions expressed here tonight are those solely of Scotty Roberts and Rocky Stucci, not necessarily.
Whoa! That's kind of racist, Scotty. I'm just saying. It's kind of racist.
There's Rocky Lightfoot over there.
Scotty, I was so excited. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You go, Adam.
I know there's so much love for the millennials out there, but I mean, outside of college campuses, I can kind of see what you're saying, Scotty, but a lot of them aren't as bad as you probably think.
Well, I have a lot of love for the millennials. I got to tell you, because I like youth. I like working with youth. I've always loved teaching and all the different things that I've done with youth.
Well, you have children that are millennials as well. So
I have children that are millennials, and you know what? My children love them to death. Rocky will back me up this. They are liberal progressives. And we get in lots of arguments.
They're liberal, progressive, and a bit psychotic. Just got to say that. Thank you.
They are. I don't want to get in an argument with my daughters because you know what? I raised them to argue. And so, and to stand for their points. And so, they might disagree. Dad, we're not liberal progressives. But they'll disagree with me vehemently. They're in a totally different. I raised them as Reagan conservatives, and they're now liberal progressives. I think it's just it's the typical thing with millennials is I'm going to grow up and I'm going to do anything but adhere to my parents' political conservatism. So.
Well, Scotty, do you think Wisconsin and Michigan, do you think that those two states are going to go Trump?
I think they will. I do, because now the city center, especially in Detroit, look at Detroit itself, and you've got a population in Detroit that has to look at what the liberal left has done for them for the last 30, 40 years, run them into bankruptcy and into nothingness. I think people have to stand back and look at what some of the issues are and how the issues affect them. Look at Flint, Michigan. So all of these places where you're going to have voter enclaves that are larger than the outstate, you're going to see many times where there's a university or a school, you are going to see a greater liberal population. And now I'm going off the cuff here. I don't have stats in front of me. I'm going just 30 years of watching things. So people are going to go, how do you know that? Well, how do you back that up? I don't. I watch things. I things. I read things. I listen to things. I've been watching elections since I first voted for Ronald Reagan when I was 18. So there you go. So I do think Michigan is going to, it's a tough call. It's close enough, but I think Michigan just may go Trump. And I do believe it's a lot of the issues that you're seeing nowadays, or I'm sorry, in the later days here toward the election. You've got a lot of undecided folks out there.
Right.
It's still, look at all the polling data, and polling can be either a bunch of big BS or it can be spot on depending on which poll you're looking at. Then you've got to look at who's being polled and the percentage of people they're polling. When you look at all these polls, there's generally, 15,000 people at most in some of these big polls. What's that? 0.000098% of the United States voting population.
Well, I think, guys, that what we're gonna have a Dewey defeats Truman moment.
Yes, we are.
Because that election, 1948, was considered to have gone firmly into the camp of Dewey. and they thought there's no way Truman's going to get elected. And they're saying the same thing about Clinton. They're saying there's no way Trump's going to get elected. And I think that there's just going to be a surprise, because if you look at Brexit, that was a surprise.
Yeah. That was a huge surprise. Well, I think it's going to be a surprise with I do believe Trump is going to pull this off in a big way. I am no prognosticator. I don't put money on it. I don't know the odds on it. All I know is this, that there are a hell of a lot of people I have met over the last several months that are people that are almost like saying, I don't want anybody to know this, but I'm a Trump supporter. I'm a Trump supporter. And they're like, I'll probably vote for Trump. But, yeah, he's got problems. I don't know, but I can't vote for Hillary. And, voting for Gary Johnson is really, it's a vote for Hillary. It's going to get him on the ballot next time in a better way. But, you hear all these people saying that kind of stuff.
You don't hear that. You don't hear that here in Tennessee, okay?
What are you hearing in Tennessee?
Trump all the way.
There you go. What I can't
Tennessee will firmly go for Trump.
What's one of the big occupations in Virginia and West Virginia and Tennessee? Coal mining, right?
Yeah.
And
I don't know so much here though. It's maybe like Kentucky or West Virginia.
In Virginia, they're talking about what are they talking about in Virginia? That Hillary wants to shut down coal mining. So why in hell is Virginia going to be even a contested state?
Do they think that Kane is gonna tip it their way or something? I did find that odd too.
Who?
Tim Kaine. Yeah.
Hey, Kane is almost like asking Gary Johnson where Aleppo is. Who the hell's Tim Kaine?
Well, hey,
Scotty.
Rocky, before Scotty joined us, I did want to ask you, since we're on the subject of Gary Johnson, and you're not happy with either Clinton or Trump, as I am.
My answer is no, nor would I even consider it. No.
Well, I mean, is there any other third-party candidates that maybe would appeal to you?
Scotty, do you want to answer that for him, please?
President, everybody shut up. Rocky Scooch is in the lead. He is on the ballot at 4% polling. President Other.
President Udda. President Udda.
So when you going to vote, you want to vote for Rocky? He may be cocky.
Well, vote for Rocky.
You vote for Rocky.
What about like the Constitution Party? What about them?
They're all right, but let me ask you this. Go out on the street, just anywhere. Go into the city center. Go out to the mall and just yell out, hey, everybody out there who knows who the Constitution Party candidate is, will you raise your hand?
Well, you could say, Scotty, that that's the fault of the media as well. That's part of the Republican and Democrat control of our media.
Yes. And if people, when people hear me or anybody say that the left is really controlling the media and they don't believe it and they call or that the left is not controlling media and they look at us and they call us conspiracy theorists and things like that. It's like, please, for the love of God, will you go turn on the news? Will you go read an article? Will you go look at something rather than just say you think it's a conspiracy theory? Because the left is primarily controlling the elections, at least what the public perceives of the elections. Mm-hmm. And you look at the last election, and you look at the election before that, 2008, McCain-Palin is a good example. You look at you watch it, there's a film that was out there that was put together about media malfeasance. And you look at how the media, they show every single, or malpractice, malfeasance. You look at every single newscaster, anchor that is a public face out there, pretty much all across the board. They were all mimicking the same exact phrases, the same exact lines, and about Palin, about McCain. They were coronating Obama because he is the first black president. And who the hell cares what color he is if he can do the job? Same with Hillary Clinton. Don't you think it's about time we had a woman in the office? It's like, yeah, but not you.
But we haven't really heard a lot of that aspect, though. There's been some of that, but it's been very muted lately that, we could have the first woman president. Okay.
But you do notice, she keeps saying, and everybody that supports her says, that she is the president that's going to stand up for women's rights. She's the president that's going to look out for women and take care of women, which is the biggest crock of B as in B, S as in S that's out there, because she has not done it yet. It's like I want to look at it's like Trump has said even to her. He said to her in the debate, he says, "You had 30 years to do that." He says, "Why isn't it accomplished yet?"
Yeah.
And, well, because she's not the president. Well, does
Luke, that's for you, baby.
Let's just take a moment to just absorb that song.
That's our song, buddy.
I'll always be our song, Rocky. I'll never forget.
Anyway, we got just completely derailed there.
By the way, Merry Christmas to everybody. Merry friggin' Christmas.
Absolutely. Merry graping Christmas, right?
Merry graping Christmas, man.
Bells ring. Are you singing?
Are you listening?
Are you listening?
What do you guys think is going to happen in foreign policy, foreign affairs, especially like what do you think about the accusations against Russia and everybody saying that WikiLeaks is just an arm of the Russian government, which I love, considering that back in the Bush administration, the left wing, WikiLeaks was a darling of the left wing, and now it's not. And what do you guys think about that? It really worries me when I hear all the rhetoric coming out of Hillary Clinton's mouth and others on the and Obama and others on the Democratic side talking about Russia. Doesn't that worry you guys?
Right. This is where you're going to hear me take a complete stand and urge people to vote for somebody other than Hillary Clinton, especially when it comes to national security. Russia is not our enemy. Even though our mainstream media and our Democrats are really working hard to try to make Russia our enemy, because that's going to justify a future war with Russia. Right. But they are not our enemy. Russia has only done what they should have been doing, and that's going in and fighting ISIS. Turkey says they were fighting ISIS, but they're ended up fighting the Kurds. I mean, it is pure madness right now when it comes to a national security level. Hillary Clinton has been part of this national security breach. WikiLeaks is exposed. And, I have a feeling that NSA, at the FBI, I have a feeling that there are some people within our own government that has been sending information to WikiLeaks to try to expose Hillary Clinton, because they know that she cannot be the one running this country. It's just unfortunate that people get so caught up in this little matrix that we call reality.
Well, and you know why they send it to Russia, Rocky? They send it to Russia as a leak. Otherwise, they're going to end up as a potential new suicide.
Well, we just went in and completely hacked their system. We went into Russia's entire infrastructure system, their grid system, and their internet system, and we just did it. And so now we're telling them that we can shut down your entire grid by a push of a button. So really, is this what the Democratic Party wanted to have? We've fallen for the bait this entire time with the Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, just because now Russia's becoming a very strong power, and Russia has been always the biggest threat to the United States. Now they're teaming up with Russia. Now they're teaming up with Iran or Iraq, one of those two. You see this big friggin' team that's being built right now that could absolutely annihilate this country as we know it.
I was reading an article from a sorry to interrupt. I was reading an article from it was more like kind of a religious based prophecy website, but it had some interesting Yeah, exactly. It had some interesting view on what's going on, because you do have Iraq making overtures to Russia. You have Iran that is firmly in Russia's camp. You have the Philippines making overtures towards China. Turkey towards Russia. That's a big one, because Turkey's a member of NATO.
That makes me a little nervous, right?
Okay. And so you have this huge realignment that is happening, and a lot of it has been because of what's happened in Syria and with the Russian response to ISIS. that people see Russia, these other countries that are around Russia, see them as being stronger than the United States and willing to take on an enemy like ISIS.
Right.
And what has Putin said very recently? He said he's looking to America, and he's looking to these elections. He says, "Look, who the American people vote for is their business."
Mm-hmm.
He says, "But what we want in the outcome is somebody who wants to partner with us and partner with us to end this problem in the Middle East." Now, I have a big problem, as does Rocky, with this whole the overtures with Turkey and so on. As we all know, Turkey is the gateway from Syria to Europe. That is going to be a huge problem. And with Erdogan and all the stuff with the fake coup that went on and his ability to suppress, what was it, Rocky, at the last count? 150,000 detractors to him politically are being suppressed in that country. So Turkey being part of that is not. Well, let's not even go into Turkey. I could launch into something big there, and I'll sound like John Ward. But right now, Russia, I see Putin as, I'm sorry for those of you who don't see it this way, and if you don't see it this way, it's probably because you aren't looking at the details and the facts. But Putin, I see as number one, whether you agree with him or not, he is the leader of his country. He is a leader, and he is doing what he believes will make Russia great again.
Scotty.
Yes.
Would you spoon with Putin?
I would.
You would.
I would spoon with Putin in the Kremlin. I would spoon with Putin in front of Lenin's tomb.
Hey, Scotty, I'm probably opening up a can of worms here, but what do you think about this? What do you think about the spirit cooking thing that's come out?
The spirit cooking.
Geez. What? You don't know what he's talking about?
I don't, off the top of my head.
This is the email that was sent from John Podesta. John Podesta's brother sent him an email from this performance artist that was in New York City that was giving the spirit cooking that had something to do with the occult and Aleister Crowley, and it blew up over the last couple of days that this happened, and this was something from the WikiLeaks. I personally don't think there's much anything to it because Podesta didn't even end up going to this spirit cooking party. But I thought since you have so many friends that are involved with the occult, Scotty, I was wondering your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Scott, you got a lot of friends that are in Satanism. So
for all of my Satanist friends out there.
Beelzebub, Lucifer, those guys.
To me, this is no more surprising than finding out Nancy Reagan had been talking to astrologers.
Right.
And you know what? That ain't nothing new. Just because we are a secularized society with a secularized government, you still have a majority of people out there, whether they admit it or not, are people that either adhere to or are fascinated by the occult. And by the occult, I just mean the unexplained in that whole spiritual realm. You've got a nation in America that has really turned from being an overtly, if you will, a Christian nation to a mildly Christianized nation that is no longer in the majority because people are looking for something different. They're looking for something that's away from the traditional answers. I'm not condoning that or calling it out as a negative either direction. From a neutral standpoint, you've got people that are looking for something different. It doesn't surprise me that Hillary Clinton might have been tied to some bizarre occult spirit cooking issue. Who the hell cares? What if she went to church and prayed that she would win the election? Would it be such a big deal? I don't know what the spiritual beliefs are of the Clintons. But I'll tell you this, there are people that hold different spiritual beliefs, and if it falls against the grain of something, they're going to criticize it. What did they do to George W. Bush? He's a born-again Christian, so there must be some problem with him. He's going to lead a theocracy. Or even with Romney when he ran 4 years ago. He's Mormon. He's going to bring a theocracy to the government because he believes in Mormonism. If somebody believes in an astrologer or is doing this weird occult stuff. Unless they're worshiping goats and eating small children that we don't know about.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, very cool. You got the Hellfire Club. Look at Ben Franklin and all those guys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, let's get away from the election a little bit here, guys, in the time that we have left, because while this has been going on, and everybody's been focused on the Trump and Hillary circus, we've got this whole thing going on in Standing Rock, and I don't know. I think Rob knows a lot more about it, and Luke knows a lot more about it than I do. So, guys, what's your viewpoint on that? What's going on out there?
Scotty,
silence.
Oh, sure. I'll lead up. I thought I'd let you lead off that time. And Rocky, I just want to say there was a little video you sent me yesterday that just popped up on my screen again. So I was distracted. Sorry.
I literally popped up on your screen, didn't it?
Literally popped up on my screen.
I'm going to send it to the Conspirnormal boys right about now.
Should send it to while we're talking. So here's the deal with Standing Rock is that, yes, that oil line needs to be in existence. The problem we're facing, though, is what we faced with many other Native American issues, and that is these treaties that are written to be in perpetuity 150 years ago. The language in most of them says in perpetuity until the United States government tries to impose some eminent domain over them of one form or another. Yes, the pipeline is off the reservation. Yes, it also runs through sacred Native American burial grounds. Yes, it could be a danger to the water supply to the reservation. Of course, those are the risks you run when you run any kind of pipeline anywhere, is a risk to damaging an environment. I do not see this as an environmental issue, though. I do see it as a right of the Standing Rock Reservation to have had a voice in what was done. And their claim is that they had no voice. You go a little deeper into the Native American issues, and I find that the Native American treaties that we wrote with the United States government, there was no time limit put on them. But the United States government, whenever it's convenient for the government, tries to find a way to say it's no longer valid. And that could be to say, well, the majority of the population of this reservation may not be, have as much Native American blood as in them as they used to. They've been more watered down. And so that's going to, they use every argument they can. Look at the Bosque Redondo down in Arizona, where they tried to move, or was it Nevada, where they tried to, in the 70s, move the Native American tribes off their land that they were given in perpetuity because they found that there were uranium deposits beneath them, one of the largest uranium deposits in the United States. So they tried to rescind the treaty orders, and that was in court. I think it's still in court, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, Scotty, you just got really robotic there on us. That was kind of strange.
Yeah.
So, my sound.
Yeah.
Oh, it's my internet.
And Rocky,
what he was doing when Scotty was talking, he actually started breakdancing, and that's kind of an effect that comes out of him when he's breakdancing and talking at the same time.
I was singing King Tut and doing the motions.
King Tut.
Rocky, you distracted me with that little GIF there. Thank you.
It is a gift. You're very well. Luke, I was trying to find Rob. I couldn't find Rob on time, and then I got cut in. So share it with Rob, please, and everybody give each other a group hug.
Adam, you can see how when we're talking about such insanely important political ideas, when you look at a video like that really sustains everything we believe in, it can distract you from the conversation.
Well, my blood pressure is definitely down now, so thank you guys.
Yeah,
that was magical.
Yeah, thank you, Rocky.
I'm all about magic, bro. Love, light, and stardust and fairy dust.
Vote for Rocky. He brings magic to your table.
Rocky, what do you think about this? What do you guys think about the Standing Rock thing? Like, what's your thoughts on it?
My wife is Native, and actually, me and her have some disagreements. Yes, we have some disagreements on it. But you know what? Treaties are treaties. And here's the thing, when I don't know if I was talking when we were live or off the air, and we were talking about the history and how this country, maybe this was on a different show I was on, but we talked about how this country was established. We get what happened to this country, but we also cannot lose the fact that over 100 million Native Americans got massacred. So what they have in this country is very little. You know, I don't care what people say about the casinos and this and that. What they have is very little, and they're just little patches of land. And, you know, when we sign these treaties are indefinite, whether it be to protect the water or to protect that little patch of land that they have left. I think big government need to keep their asses off of the Native American land and let Native American people be. I mean, they are dying. The alcoholism rate is up to 80% at every single Native tribe throughout the country. We are doing nothing for them. We want them to die off. We want these treaties to disappear because we want big oil, big pharma. We want big corporations to take over this country, and the treaties are getting in the way. Let them have what is theirs. You know, I'm so sick of big oil. I'm so sick of big banks. I'm so sick of these thugs in our political system that think that they can just do whatever the hell they want when they want, or make this land a national monument, or protect a freaking turtle. But you know what? It's theirs. Let them have it. Everybody needs to shut up and get the federal government off that property, like now, before I go up there with my new toy.
It's interesting in contrast to the Oregon standoff, how much media that attention got, and then like how this hasn't gotten very much at all.
But the whole Oregon thing, though, Adam, that got construed too. These were radical militia members. No, these guys were not radical militia members. If people did the research on the Bureau of Land Management, understood how many families in this country have been affected by having their land that has been in their family for generations, just stripped away with no compensation because the Bureau of Land Management, which is now a militarized federal organization, just comes and takes their land. They're killing hundreds of thousands of wild horses. I mean, who are they? Who is our government to take this land? Federal government cannot own state land, but they're doing it anyways. All the guys in Oregon were trying to do was they were doing the right thing. What? Because they had guns, or because they were from the military, or they were proud of the Constitution? They're proud of the American flag. Well, you know what? These natives are representing the same thing. Right. We have a bunch of bully corporate thugs that want to take over their land. And we have oil leaks all the time in this country. We have petrol leaks all the time in this country that is doing catastrophic damage to our soil. And all they're trying to do is protect what's theirs.
The same oil company had a spill, had a damaged pipeline, like just a few weeks ago, that was right on the tail of all of this. This really coming to. I can't remember where the spill was.
Are you talking about Colonial Pipeline?
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I don't have the information in front of me.
That might be it.
Because that was here. That was, I mean, we had a gas shortage, kind of because of that. Well, Alabama was where the leak actually was. I didn't know that it was the same people. That's interesting.
But you know what, Adam? See, you know what? You bring a valid point, and this goes to show how our media is tied in with the agenda of now they're just this country of the world. So when you look at how the media attacked Oregon, I mean, because the media was all over it. They were terrorists. They were American terrorists. Just the things that the media was saying to degrade what these patriots were doing. Do I agree with how it happened? No, I know half the guys that were there didn't agree with how that went down. It wasn't supposed to happen like that, but it did. Then we look at what's happening in the Native community up in North Dakota right now. And again, this is not the first time that the Natives' land has been attacked, but they're getting minimal coverage. They're getting minimal coverage with our mainstream media because what our mainstream media wants is for this to slowly just go away. They don't want people to be have their attention, focused on this. This is going to turn into another a Sitting Bull or Wounded Knee or whatever we were talking about earlier, Scott.
The Wounded Knee standoff. Yeah,
it's going to turn into another one, and this is exactly what's going to happen. They're going to demonize the Native Americans for trying to protect what they have left in this country. They're going to demonize the Natives.
Keep in mind, there were two different Wounded Knees in our national history, one in the 70s, but one in the 1890s.
Yeah.
And the one in the 1890s was where all the natives, and I compare it more to that particular gathering because they were all gathering to dance the ghost dance.
That was a massacre.
Their people. And that was a massacre.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, you know what? There's no doubt that there's going to be infiltration. There's no doubt that we got a couple yahoos, just like we did in Oregon. There's going to be people they're probably going to be covert, government operatives. They're going to go in as natives or supporters of the Native community, and they're going to create disruption. They're going to create violence. I mean, there's a history of this with the CIA, with local law enforcement, where they send these little Goombas in and they have them create disruption, violence, to create a stir to justify the actions of what the federal government wants to do. So it's going to end bad. No matter how we want to look at it, it's going to end bad.
Well, gentlemen, I really appreciate you guys coming on, and tell everybody where that they can hear the sit room or the situation room, as it's called, and what you guys are what are your predictions, guys, for electoral votes? What do you think, Scotty?
My prediction for electoral votes right now, if you look at it the way the landscape lays, Donald Trump has about 265 committed electoral votes. Now, that can change. Right now, they're about neck and neck. What do you need? 270 electoral votes to win the election.
Yes.
Now, that all depends on what states he carries, what borderline states he carries, what those that could sway either way. My prediction is, and who knows, I may eat my words afterwards on this, but I think there has been such a groundswell throughout the election. There's been a huge trending upward for Trump in the last 2 weeks, especially. I think we're going to have a surprise. We're going to see a lot more people look at Hillary Clinton, or already have, and have said, we can't have somebody who is literally a criminal, a career criminal in the office. And even those who don't like Trump, they're either not going to vote for him or they're going to vote for Trump, knowing that they've got to vote one way or the other this time. And so I believe my predictions is going to be a much bigger landslide in the Trump category than we think there's going to be. And that's not just wishful, hopeful wishing. That is looking at this and watching all the stuff that's going on that the media doesn't want most people to know. And so they're not hearing it. And I think people are going to go and they're going to vote. And I think there are also a lot of voters that claim they're undecided that would vote for Trump, but they're almost afraid of the reaction they're going to get if they tell people. And like I said earlier, there's a lot of people that say, I'm going to vote for Trump. Don't tell anybody. That's the way. I think you're going to see a lot of that coming out. So that's my prediction.
And Rocky, sorry.
When you look at it, either way you want to look at it, when you look at this little small group that actually probably runs the world, or some people call them the elites or whatever you want to call them, put your little title to them, whatever it is.
Hidden hand.
The hidden hand. They win either way, because if they get Hillary Clinton, then the thuggery can continue, the illegal transactions can continue, the worldwide domination can continue, the big corporations can continue taking over the world. If they bring Trump in and Trump wins the election, then they can collapse the economy and they can get a complete reset, and they can make trillions of dollars off a collapsed economy. They can make trillions of dollars off a collapsed healthcare system. So any way you want to look at it, the ultimate people that are controlling our government and world governments are going to win. It don't matter. They're prepared to go either direction. I hope Trump wins. I hope Hillary goes to prison. But if Hillary wins, I just urge everybody just to be prepared for what we're about to face. Because like I told Scotty last night, if we think, this is what I told Scotty last night, if we think that the land we live in right now was foreign to what we grew up with, in another 20 years, we will not be able to recognize what this country stands for no longer.
Right.
Well, guys, and the Situation Room, where can we hear it?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Situation Room, you can go to streamingtalkradio.com, rockystucci.com. The podcast pages are on both of those, but it's ebntalkradio.podbean.com. We are on terrestrial all over, pretty much all over the South. So to find the Situation Room, just go to streamingtalkradio.com, and there's a show page on there. Otherwise, just go to rockystucci.com and all the available links. Wherever Rocky Stucci Show podcasts are, so is the Situation Room, because we're just one big happy friggin' family. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. We're happy to be on there as well. So,
well, we appreciate all the support you guys have given us through all these years, man. I mean, and vice versa. I mean, we think you guys got a top notch show, and you guys have always supported us. And as many people as we know in this industry, the circle does remain very small, and we're honored to consider you guys close personal friends and to on to bigger and greater things, my brothers.
Absolutely. Big bro hug right now.
Hug. Hey,
I'm getting misty.
My nipples are misty hard.
Well, maybe you and Luke spooning as well, Rocky, right?
Luke is a sexy son of a bitch. I'm the dude who rides the skateboard. I mean, he has pretty hair. He has a beard.
I have to say ditto, Rocky. Nothing gets me going like a big, tall, muscular, manly man. You know
what I'm talking about. You know what I'm freaking talking about, huh?
Especially one with an accent, right?
Forget about it.
Yo, Rocky, I love you in a totally heterosexual yet loving kind of way.
I'm emotional. I'm gonna cry.
All right,
it's
guys.
not gay if there's no eye contact.
Go ahead, Luke.
That's all I had to say.
All right, guys.
Guys, thanks for everything.
Thanks a lot. We're going to close this out. Stay on the line briefly for us, and we will be back, hopefully, with the next guest. All right, guys, we are back. This has been a marathon show already for us. We are continuing the Conspirnormal 2016 election special. Who knows if there will be a election special for 2020? I think we're going to try to figure that out right now with the new guests that we have on. And that is someone that, is known in the area of Fortiana and the area of talking about science and the paranormal. And that's Mr. Micah Hanks. But he also has another podcast called Middle Theory, which focuses primarily on politics. Micah, it's so good to have you back on Conspirnormal. It's actually almost been a year since you've been here.
Yeah, when I was live in studio with you guys.
Yep.
And by the way, just to go ahead and get it out of the way right off the bat, that was one hell of a piss poor introduction. You've got to do better. Okay?
Well, I'll say like Emperor of the Universe, Micah Hanks. How about that?
You just say what everybody else does. Just call me the doctor.
The doctor, yeah.
God. Oh, Lord. Yeah. How are you guys doing?
Good. Great, how you been, sir?
I've been really good. Everything's just kind of in the middle of flapping at both ends over here. I'm actually, as we're talking, still shutting down programs. I'm now closing my emails. And wait. Okay, actually, it appears I have to reopen my emails because of an email that I found on a separate machine unrelated to this machine. And so the emails are going to have to be reopened right here before we get going with this podcast. And, it's just in again. Okay, it looks like that email account can now be closed, and we haven't found anything that has changed the way I felt about my emails I was reading earlier. So, okay, we're back to square one. Oh, wait, one more thing here. Also, a report has just been issued. Donald Trump has apparently been denied access to his Twitter account by his own personal aides.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that just not too long ago.
Got all the news out of the way, right?
The breaking news.
Breaking news. This just in. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a breaking news story. 2 people have been injured in a pumpkin chunkin contest. Apparently, Marvel's Green Goblin was unavailable for comment. Going now to Lester with the news. Actual headlines. All of these actual headlines, except for the whole thing about my email, which didn't have direct relevance to anything happening in the media right now, of course. But
so, Micah, what do you think's going to happen in 2 days? We're recording this on November 6th. We're literally less than 2 days away from this election. Where do you think we're going to be on election night on November and also November 9th?
Well, hopefully we'll be nestled up by our television or our computers or our portable multifunction devices in our homes, hoping for the best. Hopefully it will still be America, too. It'll be a republic if we can have it, in the words of Benjamin Franklin. I try to be an optimist with these kind of things, but permission to speak freely, gentlemen?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, granted. Good. The best I think I can do is we're preparing, of course, for Election Day. I'm doing this show with you guys tonight. I've got 2 shows back-to-back tomorrow for the Grelian Gang, and then we're doing all-day election coverage from Theory on Day. We're going to do a show earlier in the day, the actual primary podcast. Then we're going to be streaming live on Tuesday night as the results from the polls are coming in. And I think I told you guys a little earlier, the very best I feel I can do right now is just tell people all the most pertinent and important things that they need to know before they head out to the polls on Tuesday morning and go shit in a bucket.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's kind of how things stand right now. In at least my young life here, well, if we're dating Earth years here, I mean, in my lifetime, cannot imagine anything quite as bad as this election has been. Yes, the negativity. Yes, the lack of fundamental decency among the 2 candidates. I mean, I was sitting there on Guy Fawkes Day last night in a bar drinking a Dos Equis And I had to split. I was with friends in downtown Asheville, and I literally was walking down the street and just kind of almost mentally collapsed against a wall and said, "Guys, I'm sorry, I got to go." And I did. I took off. The after effects, okay, psychically, and I don't mean that in terms of mumbo jumbo. I just mean in terms of the mental state that it puts one in after following this election cycle. I committed to follow this election, and with middletheory.com, which is, as you mentioned very graciously there, Adam, my other podcast, which deals with news and current events. But this election season, we've been mostly devoted to politics with the election. This is the first time in my life. This is the first time in my life I've covered an election the way that I have covered this election, with every single week doing a significant amount of reading, research, audio editing, communication with different people, some people even with backgrounds in government and with education and law enforcement and things like that, and trying to understand all the nuances of this election. I mean, I've never been through an election where I've been so involved in that capacity. In the past, as you guys know, I've been radio broadcast, and so I've actually attended campaign rallies with some of the candidates in the past. I have met with local and with national members of Congress and with state legislature, city council, things like that. And I've worked in talk radio as a producer, so I've always kind of had a finger on the pulse of things. But this election and my involvement in covering it has been entirely different. And one more reason for that has to do with the fact that, again, like you guys do with your show, when I say permission to speak freely, I'm not just excusing myself to be foul-mouthed. I'm saying that sometimes I think that there is a pristine kind of beauty and importance to being able to be unfiltered and not having to filter your dialogue. Have you guys watched the new show on Netflix yet called Black Mirror?
We were just talking about that. Yeah.
No, I'm psychic, so that's why I am.
I've watched the first 2 episodes of the first season. I haven't seen the third one yet. Rob has, though.
Yeah, I've seen the second and third seasons mostly because we skipped the first one.
That first episode of the first season was, of course, the one I guess most people would start with. You kind of got to push yourself through it, but in an almost Huxley-esque kind of Brave New World sense of things, I saw pretty quickly where it was going and thought, well, the pastels are grating on my nerves a bit, but I'm going to push myself through this. And by the end of the episode, I thought it was quite good. But the social commentary being provided is horribly frightening and accurate. Political correctness to the point that literally, with or without any kind of governmental censorship, we are now getting to a point where we are censoring ourselves. And, in certain circumstances, I think that political correctness in moderation is important because it prevents people from just speaking and acting like a basket full of deplorables, right? But I will say that by the same token, the extreme political correctness in society today is getting to a certain point where, I mean, you can't say anything without offending somebody. You can say, for instance, could I get a white mocha, please? What do you, I mean, that kind of thing. Everybody, wants to just be offended these days. And I do think that there is a fair amount of that. And yes, I do think that there is a large contingency in America that responds favorably to Donald Trump, despite, the allegations of abuse. Really, I think it goes beyond misogyny. I think that, we can say that he has really fundamentally been abusive toward many women that he's been involved with over the years. This is a situation where people see past that because they're like, my God, anything would be better than the alternative, which is apparently where, they're kind of going with Black Mirror, which I've wondered, by the way, is that actually a reference to scrying, the ancient art of mirror gazing on a dark and reflective surface? I'm not sure if that's what they meant, but yeah, interesting show though, and I'm afraid that it does seem to kind of be pointing in the direction of where technology and society in general is going. So this election is very pivotal because it seems that in order to try and better ourselves, we almost have to go through this sort of system purge, which has brought us the very worst. We're not like Tyler Durden, lost everything, rock bottom yet, okay? But I mean, I'm starting to feel like we're damn close to it, and we really won't until after the election.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things of shows that I watch a lot is I watch Bill Maher. Okay.
Yeah.
And I kind of just like the give and take that he has with the panel. But he talks a lot about and somehow he has gotten on to the Hillary bandwagon. Okay, and he talks about how there's this Like we need to do away with the false equivalency, as he calls it. But the truth is, there is an equivalency. She's not an appealing candidate, and I still, even though now I believe that Trump is going to win this thing, I still think that all this started because she wanted him to run to make her look more appealing, and now I think it's backfired. What do you think about that, Micah?
I don't think that it's a crazy proposition.
Yeah.
Certain aspects of this, as a matter of fact, again, I can't say that there's one thing that is truly unprecedented about this election, but among the many things that have been the involvement that we've seen by outside groups such as WikiLeaks, namely WikiLeaks. But what's also interesting is that there was an Irish intelligence official who had said that, according to information that he had been shown, these leaks that are being that Russia is being accused of by the DNC and by the Clinton campaign. I mean, people inside sources, they're not really inside sources because people are talking about it publicly, but it's nothing that's being discussed in the American and the Western mainstream news. But people in this community and people overseas do seem to think that there's a likelihood that these emails came from, probably from staffers in Washington. As a matter of fact, one of the audio sound bites that explicitly stated that was featured not, I guess, today, but on the Thursday edition, which the date for that would have been, November the 3rd. That was the episode of No Agenda with Adam Curry and John Dvorak. Great program. I highly recommend to people if you're interested in an alternative perspective. I mean, the guys feel this job. They're far more speculative about things.
Right.
Not like to be, but also, you got to keep in mind it is entertainment, and it's by far one of the more entertaining podcasts out there. Anyhow, though, this audio was incredible because they had this Irish intelligence expert, and he says, I was at this intelligence dinner, and he said it was made very clear to me that these leaks are being released by people within Washington. Now, take that for what it is, because there's no evidence to substantiate that. That's just what one quote unquote, let's put our air quotes up, what expert is saying. But what's interesting is that when asked by Maher on his program, if memory serves, Bill Maher had actually asked Julian Assange about, everybody asks him about who their sources are, and he says, of course, WikiLeaks, we won't reveal our sources, that's their policy. But he said, for all it may be Democratic staffers in Washington themselves. But it's funny because when he said that, I couldn't help but feel like there was maybe some degree of truth to that. Mm-hmm. And it seems strange to me right now that people are trying to say that Donald Trump may have ties to Russia. Well, the FBI has been clear in saying two things now. First of all, the extension of the investigation into the Clinton emails, based on what they found on a computer owned by Anthony Weiner, there's no reason to change their previous determination, which many people find problematic, to say the least, considering the fact that indeed there were criminal offenses that should have incurred in terms of how Clinton managed this email situation. In likelihood, yes, there was obvious, at very least, political favoritism shown toward her. And everybody's trying to say that, Comey is trying to support Trump and trying to help Trump, and Comey's doing this and Comey's doing that. Like, if anything, that guy has now twice bent the rules in favor of Hillary Clinton, and yet they're still finger at the guy. And so where this all seems to be going is that we've got intelligence agencies that are giving her a pass on this twice now, despite what the media has said about it. I got a story open right here really quickly, if I can pull this up. This was reported at the Politico. The lead line reads, "The FBI looks like Trump's America." And it's, with 67% white male agents, the Bureau doesn't reflect the nation. Did its conservative culture play a role in Comey's decision to reveal the renewed Clinton email probe? Well, he's exonerated her essentially on 2 occasions now. Really, to me, it says just the opposite. On the other side of things, I've not seen, although I have said that for formal accusations against Russia to be made in terms of their involvement with the email hacking and then the subsequent WikiLeaks, I would think that intelligence officials should have some sort of information that would lend credence to that notion before Democratic strategist or anybody else comes out and says, indeed, that, they're going to keep doing this. Russia's going to be involved in trying to sway future elections, which was reported just today. And, of course, that they've been trying to sway this one right now. It's been the Time magazine front story. It's on the cover of New York Times and all different other kinds of media and news publications. But the point is that it seems to me, and this I think is a fair statement, that there is still question to what degree and precisely who in Russia, if there is Russian involvement, who in Russia is involved. And it may not be, as James Carville said recently, the KGB, by the way, which hasn't been actually in operation since the 1990s, but I digress.
Yeah.
The erroneous usage of currently non-existent Russian intelligence agencies by top Democratic strategists, I mean, that in itself is unprecedented. So what it's really turned out to be, guys, I think, is this big witch hunt. But what we do know is that whoever released the emails, within the WikiLeaks emails, it was stated that the Clinton campaign wanted to try and prop up the fringiest conservative candidates so as to aid in the Democratic election.
We read that email.
Yeah,
on
we
this
talked about this a few episodes ago.
And I think that they specifically mentioned Dr. Ben Carson, Donald Trump, and possibly Ted Cruz as well.
Right, it's all three.
But going back even further, as you guys know, and as your listenership would no doubt know as well, I mean, we do know for a fact that there was a phone call prior to this election and prior to Donald Trump ever throwing his hat in the ring, where Bill Clinton called him and said, you should be more involved in politics, maybe as a Republican. I mean, guys, I don't know, do we have to spell it out for him? It seems pretty clear to me what's going on. Did it backfire? Look, there are a lot of theories. Michael Moore's got his theory that never wanted the presidency. This was all just a publicity stunt that just got out of hand. I don't think that at all. I don't think that is the case in the least. I think that Trump, strange though it may sound, because I don't like the guy at all, but in a strange way, I think that Trump may actually think that he stands a chance at winning, which he does at this point, and that he has some sort of a honest drive to want to try and actually become president for the good of the country. But he also knows the power that comes with that. Whereas with Clinton, the impression I get is that there's this, and this is just my impression, but a lot of it has to do with body language and things like this. To me, there is a snide snarkiness about that individual that says this is not about the good of the country. This is about an ultimate control. So in that sense, deplorable though Donald Trump is, I could say that maybe he's more honest-hearted about this than she is. And I think that the American public knows that. I'm not trying to prop him up. I'm not a Donald Trump supporter, and I've been accused of being that. I don't support either of these candidates, and I'm proud.
Same here. So.
But I will say this. I will say that if there's one redeeming thing about Trump, it is that I think in terms of what motivates him to want to be president, God almighty, as bad as it is, it might be less or you know, not as bad as what is driving Clinton, which is what's so terrifying about this election. So, yeah, but I don't think it's crazy, Adam, to say that, you know, maybe this entire thing was a scheme and that maybe that the two candidates, I don't know, in truth, with all due respect to Mr. Trump, I don't find him as being maybe intelligent enough to be trying to pull tricks on Clinton. But I think that the Democrats have been all along trying to manipulate him and steer him. And frankly, that goes back to prior to the election because they knew that would make it easier for Clinton to be elected. And I say if she is anything more than a person who feels that it is her turn, and that's the real problem with American politics these days.
Right.
Whose turn is it? You know, go back to Christopher Hitchens and what he had to say about the Clintons, especially Hillary. Of course, we must vote for her because it's her turn, right?
But, you know, the Republicans have done the same thing. I mean, if you look at, you know, John McCain, you know, he ran in 2000 and he lost to George W. Bush because it was George W. Bush's turn. And then it was McCain's turn in 2008. And of course, Romney lost to him. And then it was Romney's turn in 2012. And it was probably going to be Jeb Bush's turn in 2016. But Trump came in there. So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You are totally right about that.
He completely turned it upside down. Donald Trump did. It was Jeb's turn. Yeah, we were ready for another Bush, weren't we?
Yep.
Oh, boy. And we're probably going to get – and here's what I said. I know you said earlier that in likelihood you think Trump will win. You know, right now the polls really it's almost too close to call, but I do see a distinct, though minute, edge that Clinton has right now. And I'd almost willed myself into holding my nose and voting for her. I'll go ahead and say that. I had been pressured by some very good friends of mine also who had said, Micah, look, you realize what the alternative is. You've got to do the right thing and vote for her. But guys, at this point, I'm not convinced that voting for her is the right thing. I'm almost inclined to think that voting for Mickey Mouse would be a better course of action than voting for for Hillary Clinton. You guys remember this, by the way?
Mickey Mouse shrieked in pain as the bear trap severed his right leg.
That's how I feel right now.
Well, Mike, I've already voted, and I voted for Gary Johnson. And although I'm not entirely happy with Johnson, I think he kind of needs to be put out to pasture. I did it primarily because I support the Libertarian Party and I support their beliefs and their political position. And I want to see the Libertarian. I think that they're the ones that have the most shot to be a strong third party. Yeah. If they can pull off a bunch of votes, it'll happen.
This is something I've wanted, this being our election special, something I've wanted to bring up all night. And that's the fact that people will constantly throw in your face that voting third party is a wasted vote. Mm-hmm. If you're voting, for Jill Stein, then you're pulling votes away from whoever. If you're voting for, Johnson, but it's not, because if people would stop saying that, it would stop being true, for one, and two, it could prove that they have, like you said, an actual a backing and a chance in the next election, and maybe that's all we can do is take one baby step forward in eliminating this bipartisan system, which we all know is completely screwed at this point.
Rob, great point you make right there. And just to add a little bit to that, I think that it's highly unlikely that Gary Johnson could win this election.
Right.
He's also, I think, shown that really he's maybe not as up to snuff, frankly, as Trump or Clinton when it comes to his knowledge of foreign policy. The Aleppo affair, and then, of course, not being able to name foreign leaders. There are plenty of problems here, but sometimes, unfortunately, voting strategy is what has to happen. During the primaries, and I've said this publicly, I'll say it again here, I voted for Ted Cruz. Now, there are things I like about Ted Cruz, by the way. There are also things about him, namely his personality and the way he always just came across sounding like a Baptist preacher.
There's some things about him that terrify me too, but
yeah, and
but I agree. Yeah,
he had this kind of everybody, but I voted for the guy because I did think that. Well, first of all, he was not a horrible candidate. The other candidate I liked, by the way, was Bernie Sanders, who I might like more than Cruz. But I'll say this too: at that time, Cruz had not dropped out of the race, and any vote for a candidate on the Republican ticket that was not Donald Trump was a vote away from Donald Trump. So I voted for Cruz. Okay, now had he dropped out, I probably would have voted for Sanders in the primary. In North Carolina, I'm registered as an independent, so according to the law and statutes in this state, I can go and I can announce which party I want to vote for during the primary as an independent, and they'll give me the ballot that I request. And so I was able to do that, and I voted Republican, and I voted for Ted to take that vote away from Donald Trump. In similar fashion, in the general election, voting for Gary Johnson, rather than being to take a vote away from Clinton or Trump, because really that vote, in a typical election, the Libertarian vote would really probably take away from the Republican candidate. But in this election, that may not be the case so much, because really there's such dissatisfaction with both candidates that a Johnson vote might actually sway in either direction. It could go, really, I could see it almost going in either direction. Some political strategists may disagree with me on that, but I think that, again, there's enough unrest and this election is close enough that the third party vote could affect either side in an unforeseen way, which more people would say, rather than, well, you're going to just, take away votes from Donald Trump, they're going to say you're going to risk handing of votes to Donald Trump. For those people who are the never Trump types, and, Clinton's obviously the one with the most, background and the most experience, which she is, let's face it. And many people find that distasteful about her. But Rob, coming back to what you said, though, about the importance of being able to kind of shake up the establishment view and get a third party more active in the American political system. Gary Johnson won't win this election. Let's face that. But if he gets enough votes, it could change the way that the Libertarian Party in 4 years is able to participate in that election. Yes. Yeah. And that alone may be important enough for people at home if you haven't decided who you're going to vote for yet. And really, I'm still kind of on the fence myself. But there's a good argument to be made. National Review has made this argument that Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson is the logical choice for conservatives if you're true conservatives, which Donald Trump is not. Then again, I don't think Hillary Clinton is a true liberal. And I think that there are good qualities about liberals and conservatives. I am as middle of the road as you can get. That's why my podcast is called Middle Theory. I am an independent voter. I vote for people, and based on their voting record and based on I think the quality of their character, which is why I'm so upset in this election. But again, yeah, Gary Johnson, I don't think we can say that he's a bad person. He may be a bit ill-informed, and he may be a bit spacey at times, but in terms of his fundamental character, there may be more to be said about that individual than either of the two primary candidates, and the vote for him could be what will be needed to change the way the electoral process will play out in 4 years. So maybe there's importance to that. Yeah.
How many votes would they have to get that funding from the federal government?
That is a good question. I think that Matt Oakley was saying he was giving the percentage, and I could ask him here, but I believe that there's a percentage somewhere in the. Let me pull this up. I should try and actually
because they got about I think about 1.5 million in 2012 is what they got.
Let me see here. The question would be how many votes would libertarians have to get in this election? Let me see what comes up here. Let's see.
And one statement I do want to make about is that I really think that their ticket is kind of topsy-turvy, because I think that Bill Weld probably should have been the presidential nominee. Because Gary Johnson, I don't know what's going on with him. I mean, maybe too much bong resin. But it just seems like Weld is much more articulate, and he can answer questions a lot better than Johnson can.
Weld is far more cerebral of the two.
Yeah.
But then, really, one might say that of any of the candidates in this election. I mean, Mike Pence compared with Donald Trump.
Sure.
Hillary Clinton, the VPs are the ones that really should be in the primary seat. So it's this weird election where you've got these lackeys in the primary spot, and then their VP candidate is intended to prop them up and make them look good.
Well, okay. I love how Trump has consistently thrown Pence under the bus, though. I love that. I mean, that's the best.
Well, let's just be clear. I mean, I think that we might say Trump's a fairly good businessman, not maybe as good as he likes everyone to think he is, but he's a fairly good businessman. But he is not the intellectual equal to Mike Pence. And yes, of course, a guy who in the past has supported conversion therapies and, all these kind of strange things like that, frankly, I don't agree with, but I can still say that the man is more even-tempered, eloquent in his speech, and frankly, in his personality, has a much more forgiving demeanor than Donald Trump ever could hope to have. By the way, coming back to the point about I thought it was 5%, but I wanted to be clear. And this Real Clear Politics article, which in fact is titled Why Gary Johnson Can Still Make Libertarian History. It reads, such a symbolic victory is less enticing for Johnson than the potential prize that he could win for his party. If Johnson snags 5% of the national popular vote, the Federal Election Commission will classify the Libertarians as an official minor party, granting the 2020 nominee a lump sum of cash for the fall campaign, courtesy of the American taxpayer.
Nice.
So all he has to do is pull 5% of his popular vote in this election, which frankly, guys, I think being the only other official third party.
Jill Stein.
Jill Stein is, yes. And is Daryl Johnson the Constitutional Party?
Yeah.
Castle. Sorry, Daryl Castle. He's not on the ballot in all 50 states, is he?
I don't think so. He is on Tennessee's ballot. I know that.
Right. But Jill Stein, of course. And don't get me wrong, I like Jill Stein, but the way I see this, I know that we're on the Conspirnormal podcast, so a lot of people may not agree, but I'm really careful when it comes to the whole anti-vaccination thing. There are a lot of people who say, well, it's really hard these days not to be an anti-vaxxer. Well, actually, no, it's not. But the thing is that, I think that while the majority of the science on the vaccination thing shows that they are not harmful, there have been some incidents that unfortunately do color that and still kind of drive that. I don't want to get down that anti-vax discussion, but there is an article at my website, mikedan.com, if you go back a little further, about during the Republican primaries, how that subject was brought up. And I cite a Harvard.edu article about anti-vaccination legislation and how, in terms of policy, this discussion is something that I think is far more interesting, whereas people tend to look at it from an advocacy kind of standpoint. And so I stated in the article, I said, listen, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I think a few things need to be stated about this, and we look at that in that article. With Jill, many have already branded her the anti-science candidate. And you guys know that I'm both a political moderate and, yes, who is interested in unexplained phenomena, and, yes, even at times conspiracy theories. But I'm also an advocate of science. I don't think that these things cannot exist I think that there are plenty of evidences that the WikiLeaks documents have shown this year of legitimate conspiracy theories. I think from time to time that there is legitimate unexplained phenomena, which does not mean something strange, kooky, paranormal, magical, but merely means that science does not yet fully understand.
Yes.
We definitely have a lot left to learn. Anyone who doesn't believe that is kind of blind. So, that's your paranormal right there. We've just not caught up yet.
I think that there's a certain stigma attached to that word, which we could get into and talk about a little bit more later. But, again, with Jill Stein, I admire her passion. I admire her activism. But again, sadly, and I think, frankly, that she might be a more, I don't know if she's per se more well-informed than Gary Johnson. Gary Johnson has more political experience than she does. I mean, again, in terms of political experience, he has more than Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's true.
So really here at the final hour, at the 11th hour, guys, I mean, maybe despite his horrible gaffes with Aleppo and the foreign leaders he couldn't name, there's still merit to the idea of a Libertarian Party vote, because if people in this country want true democracy and we want true options that are best representative of our... See, again, I haven't been a member of a political party ever in my life because I've never felt like the Democrat or the Republican Party matched my values. You guys say that you're libertarian minded. Not. And I think most Americans, Gary Johnson has said, most Americans probably are too. We're more socially liberal, but more fiscally conservative. Mm-hmm. And it's like, wow, what a crazy concept.
Right, exactly. I mean, to me, it's just something that makes it makes sense to me that you could have if you have a government that is going to stay out of your pocketbook, you should also have a government that's going to stay out of the bedroom. It just makes sense from a very practical standpoint. And one of the things that I think is interesting, though, that and I kind of have to disagree with the Libertarian Party a little bit on this, is that they've tried to appeal to the Bernie voters. And I don't think that the Bernie voters, I think that they're almost the exact opposite of what you would normally call libertarian.
Maybe so. I will say this, though, about that. Everybody, first of all, has tried to appeal to the Bernie,
right.
The Bernie voters, or as they were saying, people who would be so disgusted with Clinton that if Bernie didn't get the nomination, that they would vote for Trump. And by the way,
well, they're the ones that are more likely to sleep in on election day anyway, right?
Yeah, and which is funny because
those darn millennials.
Well, can I share something weird with you guys that I noticed the other day that really is kind of bizarre?
Sure.
There's a Hillary Clinton ad that just came out, and this thing is bizarre. You'll hear why, because
hamburger in the hamburger.
Whoa, sorry, I've got a little audio here. This is aimed at millennials, but what you just said is so important. Obviously, in this election, I'm starting to notice some really weird things, especially in the Democratic ads. Okay, when they're not attacking Trump and just trying to say horrible things about him, not that you have to try. You're hearing ads like this. This is Will Ferrell in a Hillary Clinton ad. This is the most bizarre thing I think you might hear all day.
Okay. It turns out there was no hamburger in the hamburger bun. Oh, there. I didn't see you. I'm Will Ferrell, actor, comedian, and typical run-of-the-mill millennial. Looks like you just caught me hanging out with my squad. I'll see you guys later, okay? Bye. I just wanted to talk to you directly, one vibrant youth to another. So let's all put down our Snapchat, Tinder, Instagram, and other assorted app-based technologies for a minute so we can keep it 100. Our voting history is public record. Yeah, that's right, babe. Whether we vote or not is available online for any of our fellow millennial friends to see, or even worse, parents. If you don't vote, everyone might find out you're the opposite of on fleek.
I mean, so the message here is, okay, we know a lot of people don't want to vote and plan on not voting this election. So let's guilt shame them as millennials into doing it anyway.
Right.
Okay, that's what that advertisement says to me. The other really quick weird one that I noticed today was a Michelle Obama ad saying, get out there this election and vote Democratic.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they don't say vote, or they say vote Democratic. It's like even people within the Democratic Party seem to have a particular, though perhaps unsaid, distaste for Hillary Clinton.
Yep.
They never say her by name in that Will Ferrell ad, by the way, guys. Let me just say they never say her by name halfway through the ad. A little screen pops up that says Hillary.
Right. and it seems to me that what's going to happen is that you're going to have the Trump voters turn out in droves because they are going to be the ones that are actually feel that they can actually change things. And I think the millennials and that age group and the Bernie supporters, they will stay home for whatever reason, whether it be apathy or disgust, whatever reason it is, they're going to stay home.
They're more likely to stay home. Yeah, absolutely, Adam. And again, people keep saying, according to likely polls, Hillary Clinton is leading in what state. See, I'm living in a real swing state right now. North Carolina has kind of been the political focus this year with this ridiculous, stupid-ass bathroom law thing. And I'm not
right.
What's stupid about it is the fact that it has been so controversial. Granted, I don't support the law per se, but by the same token, the byproduct has been that all the restaurants now have gender-neutral restrooms as a political statement against the law. And so now there's this confusion where nobody knows which bathroom to go into. I mean, the whole thing is kind of silly to me, is what I say. I say that it's important that we all be socially active and that we have social justice in mind. I consider myself a proponent of, things like feminism, for instance. But I think that any kind of noble and important cause can become something that can also get out of hand and can be taken to irrational extremes. And that's often what we find when there's an intellectual movement that's put behind a call that becomes a political aim of somebody. And then what the people don't seem to get, some of them, many of them do, but a lot of people get so swept up in the promises of their, glorious leader of their campaign or whatnot, that they don't even realize that these positions have been adopted by that person because it's something that they can use to hit to the heartstrings, and they can easily co-opt the American voter in doing so. Not to say these issues don't matter, but they are taken to radical extremes by political processes for purpose of manipulating the public. So step back, don't get swept up in the emotion of the moment, be calm, cool, and rational. Cold if you have to, but always look at the situation and say, is the cause that I'm supporting and is the issue that I stand for something that I can support, both in terms of how I feel I should act or vote or whatever, and also in terms of the way I can think about this? Can I apply logic as well as I know in my heart that this is right? It's got to be a balance. People always say, trust your heart, trust your judgment. Well, I say you got to do both. You got to trust your heart, but you also got to think. And more voters these days don't seem to be willing to think, because they find the little cause that's important to them, and they endlessly support that, sometimes to illogical extremes. So anyway, North Carolina's been a strange state this year, and I think there's been a lot of unnecessary tension and awareness brought to this state on part of this silly legislation.
All right, Micah, I want to talk a little bit about John Podesta. We were talking about with Scotty and Rocky a little bit about the spirit cooking thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is interesting, but this ties back in with the world of UFOs too. And Podesta apparently is huge on the whole disclosure movement. And you found a lot of stuff out about like what's going on with him and Tom DeLonge. And next week we actually have somebody wants to talk about Tom DeLonge coming on. But what have you found out about that?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I have a bit of a connection personally to some of this, and I'm naturally very interested in what role Podesta plays in not only the WikiLeaks situation and in his relationship with the Clintons, going all the way back to Bill Clinton's presidency, but also his interest in UFOs, which is something that has been well known about Podesta for years. The Reader's Digest version of things, you just mentioned Scotty and Rocky, and I haven't spoken with Scotty in a few months. We've been very busy this summer, no doubt, and I do hope to catch up with him. I miss Scotty, and he's a wonderful guy and a good friend. He and I put on a conference together back in 2012, and some of the folks that showed up at that conference as part of the media that were in attendance were Open Minds, which their website is openminds.tv, and anyone who follows UFO news will know the people at Open Minds. And at the time, Maureen Ellsbury and Jason McClellan were two of the writers and social media experts that were working with that company. And they had wanted me to come out there and work with the company as well, and it just wasn't the right time for me with regard to what I was doing in terms of business, as well as with some family things that were going on. Also, my grandmother was in failing health, and so I just kind of thought it wasn't the right time to do it. But around that time, they were able to interview Tom DeLonge about what at that time was apparently just his private interest in UFOs. But later, when he had done like a News of the Weird kind of a website thing a few years ago, and he talked about wanting to relaunch that. And when he relaunched the To the Stars Media, he went to Jason and Maureen because they'd interviewed him and said, we'd like to have you writing for the company. And they were looking for artists too. And so Jason and Maureen requested that they look at Caleb Hanks, my brother, who happens to be a graphic artist. And so lo and behold, Caleb's at home one night and gets a phone call. And being a huge Blink-182 fan from back in the day and being a punk rocker and having played music as I do since we were in high school or earlier, I think our earliest music projects together, Caleb and I go back to when I was in second grade. Tom DeLonge calls Caleb on the phone. Tom DeLonge of Blink-182 calls my... Sorry, you there?
Yeah, we're here. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm sorry. I was afraid I might have dropped out again there. So, anyway, yeah, Tom DeLonge calls Caleb on the telephone and says, "Hey, Caleb, Tom DeLonge." And, they talk about, having him come and do art for the company. So, I mean, it's quite a hell of a thing. So that lasted for a while, and then they decided to take the company in a slightly different direction. They let go of the artists and the writers amicably. And around that time, that's when we started seeing the hints of this really going in a full-blown UFO direction, and that's when the secret machines thing really took precedence. We see that A.J. Hartley and DeLonge's novel was going to be published, and so that brings us to me. I've never had any direct dealings with Tom DeLonge. My brother has, having worked for his company, and when they kind of let go of everybody and did this about face, they went in this decidedly more UFO aimed direction. Tom DeLonge announces, and frankly, I think unfairly underwent a fair amount of criticism and ridicule for doing so. He left Blink-182 to pursue his kooky UFO interest, as Rolling Stone and other magazines were reporting. But Tom DeLonge, sure enough, brought this information that he had been collecting through various people in government that he says that he's been in touch with. And at this point, thanks to WikiLeaks, I don't think that we can doubt who he's been in touch with. And we'll talk about that in a mere moment.
Right.
The situation is such that Jason McClellan, with his ties to Tom DeLonge's company, contacted me and said they're looking for some reputable UFO researchers who might want to read Tom's book. Would you like to have a copy of Tom and A.G. Hartley's novel sent to you? And I said, well, hell yeah. And the reason why I wanted to read it was because the day before I was approached by Jason about that, good buddy that Jason is, one of my listeners had contacted me and said, what do you think about this secret machines thing? Is this disinformation? Is it soft disclosure? And I said, what are you talking about, secret machines? And sure enough, the next day they contact me and say, hey, look, let's get you a copy of this. So thanks to Jason, my buddy formerly at Open Minds, they sent me a review copy, and I read the book. And it's a very well-written book. I have to say that Tom and AJ did a very good job. And lo and behold, my shock and amazement when in the final pages of the book, the afterword is written by none other than an old accomplice of mine, a friend, I suppose, a fellow who I've really only spoken to once and corresponded with a little bit, but somebody who is endlessly interesting to me, and that is Mr. Peter Levenda.
Right.
Wrote the afterword for this book. So I immediately after reading the book contacted Peter Levenda. He doesn't get back with me immediately, but subsequently get a Twitter follow and a friend book, a Facebook friend request from him. So, I haven't put all the pieces together, but this is becoming a very interesting thing. So, in the forward, Peter, again, one of the most well-respected researchers and a guy I really respect, and of course I still have right now, and I'm going to be bringing in December your copy of Unholy Alliance by Peter Levenda back to you, Adam, because I have your copy of it in my possession now. Thank you for that wonderful book. Peter Levenda, everybody check him out.
Great
one of
book.
The best, he's just one of the best researchers that there is these days, but he's working now with Tom DeLonge on a nonfiction book about the UFO subject as part of this To the Stars media thing. So that got me really interested when I found out Pete was involved for a number of reasons, Peter, because I know you're out there listening. So hit me up, okay? Anyway, that said, the when the WikiLeaks Podesta emails were released, emails from Tom DeLonge to John Podesta, Clinton's campaign manager. I mean, that's where he is right now, but let's look at his background. Of course, he worked during the Clinton administration. I remember years ago reading an article saying that he would, quote, get crazy and call Wright-Patterson Air Force Base wanting to know what's happening out there at Area 51. I mean, that's how interested in UFOs Podesta was then and is still now. Last year, he tweeted that one of his greatest regrets of the year had been not furthering the movement toward UFO disclosure. Yeah. And he also wrote the foreword for Leslie Kean's book, UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record. So, and Leslie Kean, again, is someone I've never met, but I know that my good friend in New York, MJ, who I hope to be working with on some podcast-related projects in the future, she's actually hosted events where Leslie Kean's been a speaker in the past. So certainly somebody who's a respected journalist in the UFO community, and that's the kind of people that John Podesta has involved himself with. So by virtue of 7 Degrees of Sasquatch, it's kind of funny because many of my associates and people who are involved in both politics and also the UFO movement, it's kind of strange how this all, and rock music with Tom DeLonge, it all kind of comes together. And so when this latest WikiLeaks email thing comes out, it gets really interesting because Tom DeLonge had been emailing John Podesta, and those emails were among those that were released in which he describes a Major General William Neil McCasland, who worked at the laboratory where the Roswell crash wreckage was taken right after the crash, is what DeLonge says. And so this Major Neil McCasland is a fellow who is basically in charge of the scientific division of the U.S. Air Force. He is directly accountable for essentially about 11,000 employees who work in the science and engineering divisions of the U.S. Air Force. And he is a person who I think would very well fit the qualification for what in the introduction to the first Secret Machines Chapter 1 Chasing Shadows novel, this is the individual I'm sure that Tom DeLonge was referring to as, quote-unquote, the scientist. I can't tell you his name, but we'll just call him the scientist. That's, I'm sure, who he was talking about.
Right.
So after the WikiLeaks release, and Alejandro Rojas, who still does work with Open Minds, I got to give him props. Alejandro did a fabulous job breaking down the entire WikiLeaks thing and was following that. And although I don't have the time to do so, as Alejandro does, he wrote several articles and updated his primary article with all the most up-to-date information about that and did a really great job. We talked about it on the Gralien Report, but I was in the midst of traveling while all this was happening. And while I was reading, I couldn't really write about it like Alejandro did. So good on him for being able to get that information out for people. And you can go find his articles at openminds.tv. Now, Tom DeLonge then goes on Instagram days after the WikiLeaks release and said WikiLeaks has really messed a few things up, but it's only going to get bigger and better from here. So by messing a few things up, Tom DeLonge, admitted by proxy, essentially, that, yes, WikiLeaks has revealed one of my sources.
Yeah. Which
confirms what we all pretty much knew all along. So now we know who some of the sources that have been giving Tom DeLonge information from within the U.S. Air Force actually are. The question at the end of the day, though, is this indeed a disclosure movement that Tom DeLonge is suddenly spearheading, or is this another instance of control and manipulation by the U.S. Air Force, for which there is plenty of historical precedent, as was done by one Richard Doty in the case of Paul Benowitz and subsequent my buddy Linda Moulton Howe, and a number of other people over the years who have been co-opted with bad information that the U.S. Air Force has attempted to give to them. So, I mean, that's kind of where we stand with this thing, but I never would have guessed, and this is one of the many ways that this U.S. election has been unprecedented in its weirdness, would never have guessed that people who I have a certain degree of association with would have been involved with this, and not through the political sphere, but more through the UFO side of things. It's just, it doesn't get weirder than this.
Totally bizarre. It's like every kind of it's bringing together all our interests, isn't it?
I've been trying to get at Tom DeLonge for a while because I want to sit and talk with him about. I really just want to kind of compare some notes about certain research, because he makes some reference to things, not so much in Secret Machines, but in interviews I've seen him give, that I've wanted to be able to pick his brain. I haven't been able to talk with him, but, of course, Peter Levenda, has been on the Gralien Report, and Peter had reached out to me because of some research I was doing into this weird thing going on down there in Chile, which sounded an awful lot like a weird thing that Peter experienced when he was down there in Chile back in the late 70s. So, what this all gets down to me is that while there are those who are really the diehard, we're going to release the UFO extraterrestrial information, get this out to the public, I fall on the skeptical side of the camp and say I'm not so sure that the entire UFO thing as we know it isn't just a cover for something far weirder and something that is almost extra governmental that has much more to do with politics behind the scenes than it does with alien life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, all the more reason I'm so frustrated that certain individuals I would like to be talking with about these kind of things at this moment are unavailable. But I digress. So,
well, Micah, we're almost out of time here, but what do you think is going to happen? Who do you think is going to win? Do you have a prediction for the Electoral College count?
Well, I don't have any specific predictions for the Electoral College count. I do think that this, in likelihood, the Electoral College will probably favor Clinton. I can say that much. I will also say, however, that what we're probably not taking into consideration with regard to the popular vote is that we saw an unprecedented amount of support for Donald Trump come out during the primaries. Okay, and as a result of the unprecedented support for Donald Trump during the primaries, again, he, to my knowledge, I think broke all records in the Republican Party. Most voters, the majority of voters, sadly, do not participate in those primary elections. Most voters go out on election day. That's when the election matters to them. They sit back and they wait until they have their two choices and they pick one and they go. And that's their duty as American citizens. But we saw more support for Donald Trump in the primaries. Now, a lot has come out since that time, since the media and others, including the GOP itself, began taking him seriously. And now with all the attacks, leveled by people within his own party, which isn't really his party, but he has become the nominee, people within the Democratic Party, which are just all in for using any means necessary in that very truly Machiavellian sense. Whatever has to happen, the ends justify the means. Get Clinton in office. Yes, we're going to get Clinton elected, come hell or high water. Well, again, it seems that the political process will invariably favor her. But I think that although many say that there is a silent majority and now it supports Clinton, bullshit, we're probably going to see many more people. It may not be enough to tilt the election in his favor, but in terms of that popular vote, there are going to be a lot more people that will come out in support of Donald Trump than we are expecting. And the reason why is because with the incredible turnout during the primaries, I couldn't imagine it being any less during the general.
Yeah. I hope we do not have a 2000 election scenario. Because I feel like this country's already torn apart more than it should be, and that's just going to make everything worse.
There is a distinct likelihood that could happen. I doubt clearly in this election that either candidate will be a landslide for them. What we can hope is that, and this will be my prediction. Okay, I'll leave you with this. My hope will be that one of the two candidates will lead by at least a good, between 1 and 3 point margin in the general, and that the electoral college, I think that it's going to probably favor Clinton, and I think that really the polls are showing that right now. But I don't think that the polls, again, accurately represent the likelihood that there will be people who come out in droves in support of Trump on election day. But I do hope that there will be enough of a margin of difference that it will be clear who the victor is, at least in terms of the popular vote. And I also hope that Gary Johnson, goofus though he is, I hope that he gets that 5% or more, and I hope that this is a small step toward a different kind of electoral process that will be perhaps more democratic in the future. That's my hope, my prediction.
Let's hope so. Micah, thank you for coming on, but first, before we let you go, tell everybody where they can hear Middle Theory.
Yeah, it's www.middletheory.com is the website. You can find the podcast on Stitcher and on iTunes. It goes out every week. It is a lengthy show. It is completely free. It is a value model show, which means you don't pay anything to listen, but if you like what you hear, you are able to support through donations. You can also follow us on Twitter at Middle Theory and email me info@middletheory.com. Those are all the ways to find and interact with the show. Thank you guys for letting me come on and talk about it. They always say, guys, every 4 years, this is the most important election of your lives. But I think in recent memory, and certainly within my lifetime, and probably the two of you as well, this may actually be that election. So I do hope people will get out there and vote whatever it is you think is good. I'm not sure there is such a thing as a good one in this election. Be important nonetheless.
Absolutely, sir. Well, thank you, Micah. We're going to close this section out, guys, and we will be back to close out this mega opus on Conspirnormal.
right, guys, we're back, and I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted and starving.
Yeah, it's time to eat and then go to bed.
It is indeed,
for sure.
But this was I'm glad we did this. I was a little bit leery coming into it because I've been, we've all been so inundated by all this for like 6 months that we're all sick of it. We're all fed up. We all just want to get through the end of this and hopefully survive whatever candidacy we're about to face. And, but it was refreshing to kind of go through and review it, especially with, good friends like Rocky and Scotty and Micah. And, I really do feel a little more optimistic somehow about the whole situation, even though none of us were optimistic about any of the potential candidates.
Yeah, so. The truth is I don't feel good about either one of the candidates. I do, and I think I've said this many times before, I do think that, Hillary Clinton will be more of the same, whether that's good or bad. I think probably mostly bad, but it will probably be more of the same, more of the status quo. Trump is kind of a wild card, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. The one or two things I wanted to say in closing tonight, and thanks to Rob Gray, first time guest on the show. I enjoy talking to him. I would say that I'm about 98% in agreement with a lot of the things that he said. And thanks to Scotty and to Rocky and finally to Micah for being on for this marathon. First of all, I want to say that it's important, I think, to go out and to vote. Even though how exhausted we are, how discouraged we are by an election, by the candidates, it is important to go out there and exercise what I believe is a civic duty, what makes us one of the few vestiges of democracy we probably still have.
Right.
And it's important to go out there and do that.
And yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And there's, the whole concept of it is that we all throw our ideas into a pot and the most common one comes out. But if you have, if there's a whole demographic of people out there that have grown apathetic, whose opinion isn't being counted because they feel like it doesn't matter, or they, then you're missing out on some whole, you could be shutting out a whole complete mindset of people whose opinions really do matter, right or wrong. And, just like Micah said, just go out there and do what you think is best and vote for who you think is best. And I hate to urge anyone who's uninformed to just go out and throw a ballot towards whatever party they've ever supported. But at the same time, that's just one more group that's, just as important as any other. So,
and absolutely realize as well that you do have more than two choices.
Right.
You get out of the matrix, realize that in a democracy, you should have more than two choices, and you do. And don't think for a second that, hey, my candidate isn't going to get elected. If I vote for a Gary Johnson or a Jill Stein or whoever it is on the Constitution Party ticket, and my advice would be not to think that way. Vote your conscience. Vote what you believe in. That's the most important part. One final thought. And now I guess I'll alienate some of the people that sent me friend requests tonight that
if they're still with us at this
Trump
point.
Supporters. Yeah. And you could probably say this about both of the candidates, but I feel like I want to reveal who I hope will win.
Yeah?
I hope Donald Trump wins.
Oh.
I will use an historical and literary work to justify why I think Trump should win this election. In the 1930s, the poet Robert Graves wrote 2 historical novels. One was I, Claudius. The other was Claudius the God. This was about ancient Rome, Roman emperors, basically from Augustus all the way to Claudius. There was a famous miniseries that was made in the 70s called I, Claudius about it. Very well worth watching. And being that it's not quite historical, because we don't know exactly what the real Claudius thought, but through the words of Robert Graves, we have this scenario. Claudius, towards the end of his life, is convinced by 2 of his servants, to his counselors, to marry his niece. And his niece was the mother of Nero. Claudius has a son by his previous wife named Britannicus. He marries his niece, who he despises. And Claudius realizes that her son Nero should be the successor to the emperorship, bypassing his son Britannicus. Reason why Claudius does this is he realizes that Nero will be so bad that the Roman people will clamor for the Republic to be restored. And Nero was bad. This is a little bit of the hindsight in a work of fiction. But what Claudius says to justify this is he says, let all the poisons in the mud hatch out. All the bad things that have been boiling to the surface will now come to the surface, and they will be dealt with.
Yeah, it's Alyssa said something very similar this afternoon. I don't remember exactly how she phrased it, but it was basically that I hope Trump does win the election so everyone can see what they've done and, really, really understand the situation we've put ourselves in.
Mm-hmm. I think that's it. I think that's where we're going. I mean, am I necessarily comparing Trump to Nero? It's just an historical and a literary device here. But I think that Robert Graves, at the time that he wrote that in the 1930s, and it's really Robert Graves' words, not necessarily Claudius's.
Right.
And not necessarily, it's Robert Graves' concept and not Claudius's. But in 1934 and 1935, when he wrote the 2 books, that was in the rise of fascism in Europe. And I think he could see the bad things that were boiling to the surface. And I think we're coming to the same situation. And who knows, it could happen with Hillary Clinton as well.
Right. And you know what? I'm ever the optimist. So maybe Trump will get in office and make some change and be a great diplomatic president and totally blow my mind.
We could hope so.
Yeah.
But I think that these tensions and these things that are sublimated, buried, I think they will come out into full force, and we may become a better country because of it.
At least maybe it'll force change one way or another.
I think it's a pretty cynical point of view, but I think it's all we got. So, guys, there is life after the election, and we got a great month planned. So next week we will have on Chris from Michigan, who's going to talk more about Tom DeLonge.
Ooh, a Michigander.
A Michigander, yep.
Hey.
And also Dr. Rita Louise will be on, who we talked to at Paradigm Symposium. We're going to talk about a video that she has out about the existence or non-existence of God. So that should be a good theological argument. And then we're going to have two more Michiganders the next week, Craig Ciccone and John Tenney, talking about the Kennedy assassination. Nice. And finally, Ryan Sprague about his new book about UFO experiencers.
About time we had a Michigan month.
Yeah, we have a Michigan month. Exactly. Well, we have a Michigan month every day, right? All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I know you're completely exhausted. And Luke, take us out. Oh, that's right. He left.
He was here for the middle.
Yeah, he was too tired. He couldn't take it. All right, guys. Thanks for listening to Conspirnormal. Hopefully we'll still be here.